My name is Dr. Daniel C. Rockingham. Using dedication, confidence, and respect, you have used great judgment in listening to Wrestling Cheers.
Taking your way in the world today takes everything you got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You want to go where you can see that troubles are all the same. You want to go where everybody knows your name. You want to go where you can see that troubles are all the same. You want to go where everybody knows your name.
And welcome back to Wrestling Cheers, where everybody knows your name, especially on Christmas Day. Yes, this is a surprise bonus episode of Wrestling Cheers, where we like to go talk about things in the Northeast style independent wrestling scene. We preview shows, we review shows, and sometimes we even have interviews along the way. Yes, this is a surprise interview, and I'll get to a little bit more about that here in just 1 second. I am your host. I am Heavy Set, and Wrestling Cheers is brought to you by the Trending Topics Network, NEO Sports Insiders, and MidwestTerritory.com. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to this fine podcast, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or Podbean. WrestlingCheers.podbean.com. Find us on all your social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Facebook.com/WrestlingCheers, Twitter.com/WrestlingCheers, and Instagram.com/WrestlingCheers. Email, if you so choose to desire, WrestlingCheers@gmail.com. And we do have the merch store over at whatamaneuver.net. Yes, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever you want to say. This is a bonus episode coming out today for you on Christmas Day. And, well, if you looked at the title, I did not include what this episode's about because I wanted it to be a surprise. This is, well, I guess this is the official end of Sup Month, hit number 1. And number 2, this will be the first person, I don't say the first person to come back, but it's a weird thing that I've noticed in my head. How I'm ending this year, someone who's been on previously in the year, much like we started the year with our first interview with someone who was end up being on later on again in the year. So I'd like to bring on our special guest. And it is none other than Righteous Jesse of the Kick Out of 2 podcast and Southern Underground Pro. How's it going, Jesse?
Hello, Justin. Thank you for having me. And as I told Kevin Koo when I found out that I would be the surprise episode, I am also a Christmas present. And it feels damn good to be a Christmas present. But thank you for having me. I appreciate you doing this whole Sup Month. It's really crazy, not to go on a tangent early on, but it's really crazy that a small company from Tennessee has, we've been featured on the Spotlight Series. We've been featured on I Got Your 5 Stars, and you've actually dedicated a whole month to us. And, it really does mean a lot, and we're extremely appreciative of it. So thank you.
It's really funny because, this month truly wouldn't have happened without you. Not even the whole, Sup thing. Obviously, if there wasn't no Southern Underground Pro, there would be no Southern Underground Pro month. And I want to touch on the reason why you're here on the Christmas episode. And about a year ago, we weren't seeing eye to eye. Really, mostly my fault. I blocked everybody from Kick Out at 2. Blocked the Kick Out at 2 account, blocked the Sup account, not only from my personal account, but from Wrestling Cheers account. In January, after going to Ray Rowe's last show, Josh Prohibition had a nice speech talking about burying the hatchet with people. And I was like, you know what? This beef I have with them is dumb. So let's just, start over, bury the hatchet. And we went from being at odds with each other to now 1 year later, we've both been on now each other's shows. This is your second time on the show, and we've really built a relationship better than we originally had. And the way I look at Christmas and Christmas Day, it's a day where you're sitting around the tree with family, opening up presents, and whether you're even in hard times, because I've had years where there's just been hard times, there's still that Christmas joy, and we're kind of peace, love to all your fellow man. I feel like that's the kind of year that we've had. So to me, you're the perfect guest to have on and just kind of like kick back and chill and have all the fun conversations that we can have.
Yeah, man. I mean, we're both adults, and, beef is, for the most part, dumb. And, I feel like that's something we both realized as we've grown over the year. I'm just happy. I feel like we talk, fairly regularly, almost weekly, whether it's, through text or Twitter, whatever. And it's cool. It's cool that we've, been able to bear the hatchet. And it's funny how full circle this is, because you talked about how Josh Prohibition gave that speech.
Yeah.
And I actually just finished up that 2-part series that Josh Prohibition did on The Card Is Going to Change. And Josh Prohibition is actually a wrestler that I hold in the highest of regards, because without him and Matt Cross, actually, I probably would have never dove. And I don't know, like, if this is something that they would be stoked on or kind of look down on, but like without them, I probably would have never gotten as into backyard wrestling as I did, which in turn I would have not trained to be a pro wrestler, and then literally none of this would have happened for me. So it's crazy just how full circle it goes, and like how many layers there are to it if you like really dig. Also, I'm very sorry for any coughing and clearing in my throat. I'm still getting over this horrible sinus infection that just won't go away.
How much of like the Backyard Wrestling series did you watch?
Oh, dude, I had every single DVD I think they did, I don't know if I think it's technically 7 DVDs. But like the 6th and 7th DVD were a double pack where it was basically just death matches from like IWA Mid-South and maybe CZW and like other shit. But I had every single one of them. I had I had most of like the weird offshoots too. And it was always like a weird thing where Brett and I always wanted to be on those DVDs, but we never sent our stuff in for whatever reason. I think we were kind of discouraged because we were probably like between the ages of like 13 and 15. I think in our heads, even though we watched them, we were like, they don't want stuff from like 13 or 15 year olds. And truth be told, it's probably best we didn't send in that early stuff. The stuff after we trained, holy shit, that probably would have got a DVD of its own, because we were doing some wild stuff.
Do you remember, or did you have the Passion for Pain DVD?
Oh, that dude. So, actually, another funny story, I did have that DVD, and I watched that probably so much that it started skipping. But I actually went on Spotify today, and I was looking for an Against Me EP called The Disco Before the Breakdown, and because of Josh Prohibition and Matt Cross, I found Against Me because The Disco Before the Breakdown was, I believe, the last song played on A Passion for Pain. And because of them, I found one of my favorite punk bands. And A Passion for Pain The Disco Before the Breakdown is not on Spotify anymore. And I was real bummed when I found that out today.
The funny thing is I just got A Passion for Pain DVD in yesterday. Like, that's one of my favorite DVDs, but I didn't know about it until I went to my first independent show. And the first piece of merchandise I bought off a wrestler was from Matt Cross. I bought Passion for Pain DVD, which it was just, he redid it. Like, he just printed out the packaging for it, put it in a DVD case, and like deal with a DVD-R for the actual DVD. And I thought that was just like what they threw together. Then I found out later, like, oh, that was an actual DVD that you could have bought. And I just bought, like, I think it was last week, I bought it off eBay. It came with that and Volume 5. Turns out Volume 5 was the one DVD that I needed, not counting 6 and 7. And then, ironically enough, I just looked up last night, like, what 6 and 7 was, and it was basically what you explained, that, yeah, it's, like, just, like, death matches from, independent organizations. So,
it's funny because, like, there's actually a GIF circulating right now. I think it's JC Bailey and Madman Pondo in a circus death match.
Yeah.
Where they come off a scaffold onto like just a net of barbed wire, and that's like circulating on Twitter right now. And no sooner I saw it, I was like, oh, that was on Backyard Wrestling 6 and 7. Like, I watched that match probably hundreds of times.
Yeah.
Just because it was so insane to me, because there's just a net of barbed wire on the ring, and they hit so hard and bounce. And now, like, Connor Claxton's done that with trampolines and stuff in CZW. But just seeing that when you're, like, 13,
yeah,
it's insane.
Like, growing up, the only ones that I seen, I had an ex, like obviously a girlfriend in high school. Her brother had volume 1 and 2 on VHS, and I got to borrow them. And I remember that's when I like first found out about this whole world. I never seen anything until years later, and then all finding out everything, you know, about all these other DVDs and everything. The passion for pain, the fact that it was, you know, M-Dog and Josh Prohibition putting that thing together, like it was basically Jackass style. And I can't remember if it was like before or after Jackass when they officially did everything. But when I used to go to PWO/Prime Wrestling shows when they were in Cleveland, and obviously M-Dog was there, I would always come up with signs that were a reference to that DVD. Like I created a sign one time that said Party Box.
Oh man, that's incredible.
I created another, I'm trying to remember some of the other ones. I know I did one that said like Don't Come Home Bleeding, which is technically a reference for Passion for Pain, but that was the title they wanted. I remember M-Dog said on The Art of Wrestling was like, don't like, because like his mom always said like Don't Come Home Bleeding. There was another one that I'd have to look up, and it might have been the Hulk Hogan name that they had, you know, because there was the Hulk Hogan Macho Man thing, and I can't remember if that was a sign or not.
Were hilarious.
Exactly, man. Like they found in like, okay, we're gonna have all these like eras of when we were wrestling, and then we're gonna just like throw in like us dicking around. Like it's just like I remember Matt telling me the story about how if you remember, they got one like exercise machine, like one of those ones that kind of like shaped like a bike, but you can like pull it forward and like rise up, and they put it in like the back of a pickup truck, and like we're driving it around.
Yeah, like the row machine or whatever.
Something probably like that. It's been a while since I've watched it. Like since I bought an official DVD, I want to rewatch it, and I'm actually planning on having both M-Dog and J-Pro sign that just like my other copy. It's so awesome. I've even told people, because he doesn't sell it anymore, I'm like, go online and buy it, because that DVD is awesome.
It really is. And like, if I would have been in your area for those shows way back when, and I saw you make signs in reference to A Passion for Pain, I probably would have been across the room from you at the next show with a Hi Ho Beaver sign, because for some reason the Hi Ho Beaver segments, just like Brett and I used to like reference them all the time, and I was always a chicken shit and afraid to try to split an apple with my teeth, because it just seems like the worst idea. But I think it's Josh's brother that does that in the DVD Creeping Death. Yeah, man, like, fuck, what show was it? I think it was the first AIW show I went to was AIW vs. the World. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, that was Tommy End and Ray Rowe.
Yes.
I think that was the main event.
Yes, that was.
I had actually reached out to Tommy End a few weeks before and asked him if we could do an interview, and he said, yeah. So after the show, I went up to him and I was like, hey man, like, I'm the guy you talk to on Twitter. Whenever you have time, like, I know you probably got to sell merch and change and stuff. And he was like, really cool. But while he was taking care of his stuff, I actually got to talk to Matt Cross and Josh at the same time. And I had met Matt before in Nashville, but I hadn't met Josh yet. And out of the two, like, obviously no slight to Matt, but Josh was always my favorite. Josh was like, you know, Matt was like, he had like the FUBU gimmick, and like the rapper gimmick, and Josh was like the more punk rock straight edge. Yeah. You know, and that's what I identified with more. That may have actually been how I found straight edge, was through Josh. But I like fucking like got weirdly like excited to talk to both of them at the same time. They like didn't even try to record anything. It was just like genuinely excited to get to talk to them and like tell them how much they meant to me. Yeah. And like, I'm pretty sure I told Josh he was how I found straight edge. And then he was like, well, I hope it's not ruining the experience that I'm standing here drinking a beer. And I was like, no, because I'm not shit anymore either. And we got to like laugh over that and talk. And I was wearing a Ghost shirt actually, and he was like, is that a band? And I was like, oh yeah. And he was like, I don't keep up with the music that the young kids are listening to anymore. And it was just so funny to me. And then from that, like Spider Nate Webb joined in the conversation, and that led to us interviewing Nate, and Nate was incredible. And like, it was just such a weird mix of like me just hanging out with guys that I watched and like looked up to as a kid. It was so weird.
When it comes to like J Pro and M Dog, because I didn't really grow up watching them like in those type of things, but if I had to pick a favorite, it's really hard, because the thing that I love about J Pro, that I fell in love with him when I started watching independent wrestling, is his promo skills. There's a promo that I can find online. It's literally from the feud that I caught with him. Like, okay, like I think I've mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned this to you before. Yeah, I think it might have been on our crossover episode, one of them, where I said like the first match I ever seen was M Dog, J Pro, Gargano, triple threat.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, there was a promo at one of the shows prior to it. It wasn't the one that they shot that day. There's one that was like on an episode so many weeks prior, where they J Pro just took the whole feud. He like starts off very calm, and then he builds, and then he first starts talking about like Gargano, and then he flips it and gets on M Dog, and then basically wraps it all up, basically saying like, you both would be nothing without me. But he does it more than a stereotypical wrestler would. The thing that I love about J Pro is I do not think he cuts a bad promo. He's just so good. And then on the other side with M Dog, the most approachable wrestler I have ever met, and one that like you could have an easy conversation with. There's many times I've walked up to his gimmick table, maybe just to say hi, and we end up having like a 5-minute conversation. Like, right. That's what I love about him. So like picking between them is so hard.
And it's really funny that you bring up Matt being so approachable, because the first WrestleCade we went to, I guess it was 2 years ago now? 3 years ago? I can't remember. We ran into him, and I was like, hey dude, we do this thing, this podcast, would you want to do it? And he was like, maybe later. Like, it was super hectic, and I was like, oh yeah, well not right now. He's like, maybe later, try to catch me at this time. And then we actually ended up standing there for a few minutes and having a conversation about something random. I think something had just happened, like off in the distance. We both like had that weird moment where we saw it and just like talked about it briefly. And then later, I think the next day, we were walking from our car to the elevator in the parking garage, and lo and behold, he's in the elevator. We have a quick conversation and go our separate ways. And like, when we first started the podcast, I probably would have been really bummed that he didn't do the interview, but I was like just kind of stoked that I got to have like these two moments with a guy that I just really appreciated growing up. And like, thanks to him and Josh, really, I always say, whenever I'm asked, like, of course I grew up in like the Attitude Era, where like I idolized the Hardy Boys, like Matt and Jeff, like were probably the top reason I did a lot of the dumb stuff that I did. And then I saw Matt and Josh, and I was just like, I can do this. Because of these two guys, I know I can do this to some capacity. And then I found Nick Mondo, and that's where I found like my love for deathmatch wrestling, which is probably something Nick Mondo would never want to hear, after hearing all the interviews he's done over the past few years. But Matt and Josh were the ones that made me realize, like, I might not be the biggest, and I might not be the strongest or the fastest, but this is, like, I have the heart to do this, that, no pun intended, but I have the passion to do this, so I can do it to some level. I can do this. So without me finding Matt Cross and Josh Prohibition, I probably don't try as hard to do any of it. So I owe those guys, a lot of gratitude.
Which part do you enjoy more from like basically your career? You have 3 parts. You have wrestler, you have podcaster, and then you have, promoter.
Man, it's so hard. I guess I've never really thought about it. Thinking, like, putting thought into it, it's really hard. And I know it's super cheesy, but I don't know if I could, like, pick one that I enjoy the most. There's parts from each that I enjoy. Podcasting and promoting overlap in similarities, like, reaching out to people for either an episode or a booking kind of feels the same. With wrestling, there's just, if you've done it, then you know the rush that you get, and it's like you can't compare it to anything. Like the injuries, the jitters, the nerves. If you blow something in the ring, like if you blow a spot, like just the overall feeling that you have when it's done, and if you have a good match, like you can't compare that to anything. It's just incomparable. Prime example, like my match with Brett from February. After that match, I knew that I was fucked up. I knew that I had a concussion, and I didn't know how bad it was, but I knew I had a concussion just based on how I felt. But I didn't care because I knew that despite the poor choices that I made for myself, we told the story that we needed to tell, and it's still one, like, and this isn't me just like tooting my own horn because I'm really not that type of person, but that's still one of our most talked about matches. And granted, it's probably not for the reasons that I want, but it's still one of our most talked about matches. Wrestling, I haven't wrestled as much as I've podcasted or really promoted. But I feel like if I really had to nail down one, podcasting was great and it was a lot of fun, but I really enjoy the promoting side because, like, I'm not really one for like team environments, but it's really cool when like me and Koo and everybody sit down and like really like put together a card or a show or like lay out a storyline that we want to see progress over a certain period of time. It's so fulfilling to watch everything play out over shows and like, what's a good example? Let's see. Okay. For example, like Kurt Stallion, when we decided Kurt Stallion was going to be our guy, the first show, the crowd was like kind of iffy on him.
Yeah.
But they got behind him because they knew that he was the guy we were going with. But we could feel them wanting to boo him. So when we finally turned him, that crowd lost their shit. And that's what they wanted to do the whole time. That was really rewarding. O'Shea Edwards, when he just took the ball and ran with it, and that crowd loved him, it was incredible. The crowd loved Marco and Dan. Just knowing that, like, you can give them what they want, it's the best feeling in the world. Like, I always say that we have the most trusting crowd, and that's because, like, when Kurt was our champion and they cheered him, even though they really wanted to boo him, like, they understood where we were going, and they understood that we had to get to a certain point for them to get what they wanted, and they were fully down for that ride. And I can't tell you how much that means to me, that they just trust us that much to know that eventually they're going to get what they want. But I think if I had to pick one, wrestling's been a lot of fun, and it was the ultimate goal for a while. I never thought I'd be a podcaster or promoter. Podcasting with Brittany and Wilkes has been incredible, but really just promoting was something I never saw myself doing. I never thought it was like within reach. So I think I'd have to go with promoting. It hurts less, and it's just super rewarding.
Like, it's really crazy the fact that, Southern Underground Pro is just that special. I don't know what it is. Like, I think I was more gravitated towards it because of, like, even before, like, we had our issues, like, I listened to Kick Out of 2 and all that stuff. So there's, like, names that I heard of. And then there was just like, all right, we're going to do this organization in Nashville. And I was like, okay, like, we'll see how this goes. And then seeing, like, people from up here get opportunities down there and just getting a mixture of, like, all right, we're going to get people from all these different places that are, like, it's not like too crazy, not too far away. And we're going to put them on a show together, and we're just going to do it in this bar in Nashville. And if people like it, they like it. If they don't, whatever. And I feel like it's just been a constant progression of just getting bigger and bigger and better and better. And, you know, if it wasn't for Southern Underground Pro, I wouldn't know who the fuck Marco Stunt was. And all the other things that have come with that aspect of it. And it's just crazy that, like, of every promotion that is on Powerbomb, like, that's my number one go-to. Like, I love my AIW, but let's be honest, I've only missed a handful of shows since I started attending shows towards the end of 2011. So I've seen the shows. The only things that I want to see from AIW on those shows is actually the pre-show promos that I never get to see because obviously it's on the disc. I never get a chance to buy the DVD or the digital copy. So, like, this is me going, okay, let me watch these promos. And that means, like I said, just Southern Underground Pro. I go, okay, cool. And even the fact, too, I've known spoilers because, let's face it, we're on the internet. It takes, you know, about a week and a half, 2 weeks for the shows to come out. So I know a lot of spoilers, but I'm still tuning in going, okay, let me see what happens. And I think there's, you know, a lot of friends that I've had up here where, you know, they've taken notice to Southern Underground Pro. A friend of mine has a podcast called Not Ready for Primetime Wrestling, and they did a commentary podcast, a two-parter, where they did commentary for one of the shows, and it's mainly because, like, me going, hey, Southern Underground Pro is awesome, everybody needs to check it out. And the one guy, one co-host was just like, all right, I'm gonna give them a shot, and he loves you guys too. He wants to come down with me, but something about, like, his new job would have him working that Sunday night, and he's like, I want to go, but I can't. And I don't know how many promotions out there, or just the level you have to be at for people to really want to travel to your promotion. Like, I think that speaks volumes. And obviously, I know I'm not the only podcaster that feels like that. You know, I've got your 5 stars. You know, Jeremy, talks about he wants to come down. I think Struggles, he wants to come down too. There's something special going on in Nashville, and I never figured I would ever say I want to go on down to Nashville for fun, because growing up I never thought, like, Nashville sounded that fun.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, like, even living here for most of my life, not being originally from here, but living here most of my life, like, it's really weird to me when people want to come to Nashville for anything. But it's really cool that we've given people a reason to want to come to Nashville. I will say, to its credit, Nashville is an incredibly rapidly growing city. But it's still so weird to me when people just want to come here. And, like, I really can't thank you, Ryan and Jeremy, enough for, you know, everything you've done for, you know, spreading the word. Like, I talk to all three of you guys fairly regularly, and I feel like every time I talk to you, each of you tell me that you've gotten somebody else new turned on to Southern Underground Pro.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, little known fact, if I find out that somebody does a podcast, whether it's like a review or a commentary or an interview, something stuff related, if I know about it, I'll listen to it. So I'm going to have, when we get done, I'm going to have you text me that podcast you were just talking about so I can check it out.
Okay.
Just because I'm curious to see how other people feel about it, because, like, it's not necessarily a vanity thing, but, like, if we can improve, then I want to know how we can improve, you know? And I don't know if that's something that everybody does, but I find it very important, and I just never want to get stale or stagnant. Yeah, but no, like, for real, I do listen. Like, if I find out that somebody does a podcast related to sub, I try to listen to it. Just because I do find it crazy that people actually care. Mm-hmm. Because we kind of started off as, like, a joke, and then it very rapidly became, like, a real thing. So when people do talk about stuff, I'm very interested to see if they like it or hate it, because, you know, regardless, like, we're going to keep doing it, but if we can improve, then I want to.
I think that's, like, I don't know how you feel from obviously a promoter's point of view, because I'm not a fucking promoter, but, like, from a podcaster point of view, when, granted, that's not necessarily people talk about my podcast, but I always want to get that, like, feedback. Like, people don't have to be like, oh my God, I love it, it's the great thing, best thing ever. Like, no, tell me what you don't like. I don't care if it's like, I think they go too long, or, oh, I don't like this. I'm like, well, unless you say, well, I don't like you, then I don't care. Like, tell me what I can work on, because I think that's something from a content creator's point of view. I want to get better. And there's a lot of people be like, well, your mic quality's great and this is great and this is great. I'm like, thank you. I love that. That makes me feel good when I feel like shit. But like some days I just feel like it's shitty and I want to get it better. Like, and that's something that just annoys me.
That makes perfect sense. And like, you being around wrestling as much as you are now, you may have heard this. But when you're a wrestler, you're supposed to ask people what they thought of your match. Mm. And when you go through that curtain after your match and you ask a vet, what did you think? Oh, it's great. Chances are that means they didn't watch it.
Yeah.
That's like the running joke and the running theme is like when you ask a vet and they say, oh, it's great, they didn't watch it. And you just kind of take that and you're like, thanks. And then you ask somebody else and they're like, well, this was the shits and this was the shits, but that's how you learn. That's how you get better. And I always find it really funny when people can't take criticisms. And I'm guilty of it myself. Yeah. With certain things. With stuff, I'm a little more relaxed because I know that, it's going to be an ever changing and ever evolving world of, well, they like this person, but they don't like this person. But just because they don't like this person doesn't mean that this idea can't work. It's just not going to work for that person.
Yeah.
So, as long as people are giving feedback, in anything that we're doing, then, good or bad, it's good as long as there's actual thought to it. If there's no thought to it and it's just, oh yeah, it sounded good, then I tend to write that off, as shitty as that may sound. But if you can tell me why you think it's good, then I'm all for it. Yeah. If you can tell me why you think it sucks, I'm 1000% all ears, because I want to know why it sucks. I want to know why it's good. That's just the way I've always been. Ever since I was a kid, I've always been inquisitive like that. I want to know, what I can do to be better on all fronts, or, what I can do to make whatever it is I'm doing better. Because, if you don't know, then you can't fix it.
Yeah. I think like even for me, like when I started the Ohio Indie Report, I think people were telling me back then, like, oh, I like it. It's great. But, I feel like I've improved on many different levels. Like it'd be hard for me to go back and listen to some of those episodes. It's going to be like, oh, okay, I know I could have fixed this. I could have fixed this. I could have done this better. Certain things, like especially like with audio, I'm like, yeah, I didn't have the best microphone. I understand that's what I had at the time, but like I could have edited better. And even as long as I've been doing it, I'm still learning new things, and I just try to make it so that people at least enjoy it. And I haven't heard like a complaint in a while, because I know there would be episodes where I'll never forget, where like I'm editing it, I'm like, this episode fucking sucks. There's nothing I can do about it, but I have to just go through with it and basically apologize. There's episodes I know out there, maybe how in report, maybe early wrestling chairs, where I'd like start off with an intro like, hey, I tried fixing shit, it didn't work out. Sorry, this is the best I could do. Well, I'll try again next week. There's, so.
And for me, like, if I were to hear that at the beginning of an episode, that wouldn't be a turnoff at all. I would appreciate that honesty, because, like, we're all human. I mean, sometimes you just literally have to make the best out of what you've got. And, for some people it's not enough, but that's something that I can more than appreciate, because, that's just day-to-day life. Like, some days you're going to wake up and, things just aren't going to go great. Like, maybe your coffee pot just makes a really horrible pot of coffee, or, like your breakfast sucks. Like, you just kind of got to make do with what you've got. And, that's day-to-day life, and it reflects in everything. And if people can't take that with a podcast, or, even when I was in bands, man, like we would record something and it might sound like shit, but it's like, at least we have a recording. Like, we have something to show people, like, this might sound like shit, but our live shows kick ass, So I get that. And it's something that I can appreciate. It's, when you're a content creator, you're trying to put something out there for people to appreciate and enjoy. It just means the world when they're willing to take the 2 seconds to give you honest feedback, whether it's good or bad. Yeah. And even the bad feedback isn't bad. It's a learning experience.
Yeah. I've come as far as I have. And, sometimes when you wake up, like you said, your coffee pot's not making a great cup of coffee, or I don't know, you open your energy drink and, I don't know if there's something wrong with
Very
it.
topical.
I kind of want to get into that a little bit because, on a side note of, kind of getting, I liked it when this past week, when this comes out, it'll be almost 2 weeks ago, when Jeremy mentioned about listening to Wrestling Cheers. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then I knew, like, right off the bat, I'm like, yeah, I've listened to his show. Like, we differ a lot. I'll just say, like, I love comedy wrestling. He hates it. And I know,
God, he hates it so much.
I know. And I'm just like, people like that. I'm just like, chill. Like, it's an art. You don't have to like it. You don't have to like everything out there. Like, I get it. But anyway, but kind of like, he's like, well, you didn't even ask a lot of wrestling questions. And I'll always say, like, yeah, that's kind of my point. Because we got shows like, me and you, like, with Wrestling Cheers and Kick Out at 2, like, yeah, we'll talk about wrestling, but let's talk about other stuff because, like everybody I've had on this month, they've done podcasts other places where they've talked strictly wrestling. Like, if you want, you want more wrestling with Brett, good, I've got your 5 stars. If you want more wrestling with Koo, go to Spotlight Series with Struggles. If you want more wrestling with Marco Stunt, he did The Road Home from Wrestling a couple months back. And the thing that I loved, which we briefly talked about in the last episode, but it was when I first found you guys, it was like someone took an idea that I had and did it before me. And I had mentioned that I had an idea for a show, and it was going to be called Question Kayfabe. And it was going to be like, okay, we'll talk wrestling, but we'll like talk other stuff. And then when I heard you guys like talking other stuff with the wrestlers, I was like, fuck, that was my idea. Why the fuck didn't I do it? Because I was going to have it as a separate show from the Ohio Indie Report. And I was like, well, if someone else is doing it, like, I'm not necessarily stealing it, but I'm not going to like blatantly do what they're doing. I'll just put my own spin back on it. But at least I know like someone else is doing it and people are listening. So people want to hear that.
It's really funny. Like, obviously we've really slowed down with Kick Out at 2. And it's honestly become more of a, the card is going to change format where we just, focus more on sub shows. But it's really funny. Like, I had this conversation with somebody when we first decided to slow down, and I can't remember who it was. But, I feel like when we started like 3-ish years ago, and this is going to sound really nerdy and really in my mom's basement. But I feel like the landscape of wrestling podcast has changed so much over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And, like, don't get me wrong. Like, I love everybody that listens to Kick Out at 2 and has supported Kick Out at 2 over the years. But the landscape of wrestling podcasts has changed so much. And I feel like we're not going to be missed. Because honestly, wrestling podcasts are in such a better place now than they were then. Like, people are thinking outside of the box, and maybe it's just my ignorance and not really keeping up with WWE as much, but I feel like I just see less and less of the WWE review formats. And like, there's more of, like where like you talk about AIW and now SUP, and you talk to wrestlers that are in your area. And like, that's the shit that interests me. Like, I love AIW, and I love just hearing from different wrestlers. And then like, I got your 5 stars where Jeremy reviews different independent shows, and like, he'll have interviews. And then Ryan with, the Spotlight series, like, of course he does the interview format, but sometimes he'll have his wife on, and they'll do like she's not a huge wrestling fan, but they'll do like their little commentary deal. Wrestling podcasts are just in a really independent wrestling podcasts are just in a really good spot right now. And I feel like, and I'm not saying that like we were the glue holding everything together, because that's so far from the truth. But I feel like if we just fade away, then everything will be okay, because there's a really good group of wrestling podcasts for people that want really good wrestling podcasts. And I'm not just saying this because we're talking, but like Wrestling Cheers, I got your 5 stars, and the Spotlight series are like top tier shit for me. Yeah. And I feel like whenever anybody asks me, like which wrestling podcast should I listen to, those are the three that I put out there, along with like IndieCast. And then there's another one that I just found recently. Fuck, I feel really bad because I can't think of what it is off the top of my head. But there's just a really good crop of independent wrestling podcasts out right now, and I feel like a few years ago that wasn't necessarily the case.
Well, I feel like all those podcasts that you mentioned, like your WWE stuff, those are still out there, and it's hard for some people to get away from that. Like when I first started out, but in my years of podcasting, I have had a plethora of different like podcasts, and I did nothing that was just serious. It's more or less, I had a NFL podcast for years, where it was like me and a friend, like we'd talk about games and we talk about like who we thought we were going to win every week. And that became our thing. We did it for so many years. And then much like actually they all kind of had the same ending, where I wanted to start concentrating on wrestling cheers because it was right around the time of the rebrand. I had a wrestling podcast a couple that I was like either a part of or I hosted. But it got to the point of March 2016, through a couple months after Wrestling Cheers was officially rebranded, I was like, you know what? I just want to spend all my time on this show. Like, I'm getting tired of like all these days I got to do all these different podcasts. The only one that I regularly do outside of Wrestling Cheers anymore is a friend of mine's show where we talk about movies. Other than that, like it's just this, and I love doing what I do for this local area, and I think that's one thing I liked about something like Kick Out of Two, and even I Got Your 5 Stars. Like I don't listen to every episode of his because maybe it's just he's talking about a show that like it's like a company that I'm not familiar with, so it's like I'll pass over those. But if I see something that catches my eye, I listen to it. And then I did not start listening to the Spotlight series until like a couple months ago because it was a logo that I have seen everywhere. I probably known so many wrestlers that have been on the show. They promoted it. And just coming from a podcaster's point of view for so many years, I'm like, okay, I don't care. Like, if I don't know who you are, I don't care. And then I forget who was on the show, and I was like, fuck it. Let me go, I'll listen to this, and I actually know what it was. It was when he was on Kick Out of 2 with you. And the funny thing is that episode in my head sounds like, because it's kind of what it is, it sounds like you on his show, but he's on your show because that's
kind of what it turned into
because he used his recording. That's funny, but yeah,
Ryan saved my ass for that one,
dude. From a podcaster's point of view, like that's what you gotta do, dude. I save every podcast like files for it. I somewhere have on my external hard drive now our full conversation from earlier this year. I have the Wrestling Cheers portion, obviously, and then I have the Kick Out of 2 portion recorded from my end. And I've had my fair share of like, you're basically doing a podcast with another podcaster, and they're like, hey, I'm going to record too. And because I used to use a program when I used Skype called Pamela, which like does decent, not the best, but does decent recording. Every so once in a while, like I was at a place that had iffy internet, so the internet was getting kind of choppy, and like it kept like stopping the recording, and I'd have to hit like record again, and I was going through all this stuff, and the guy who I was on the podcast with, he was like, "Dude, I have a recording going. I'll just send it to you when we're done." I'm like, "Oh, thank God." So it's definitely one of those things when you have two people like that together. It's like, all right, I'll record too, just so we're good, and so that always like rings in my head. So it's like when I heard that episode, I was like, all right, let me check out this podcast. And I know I've always seen the logo. And then I went through the catalog. I was like, oh wow, there's a lot of people that I know who have been on this show. So I downloaded all those episodes that of people I like or know about or whatever. And every so once in a while, I'll listen to one of those episodes. Like I'll just like reach in the archive. Like not too long ago, I listened to the Davey Vega episode. That's an awesome episode. I love Davey Vega. And I was like right around the beginning of football season this year. And then after LeBron left, so there was a conversation about that. So like, it's been somewhat talked about. I know he's going to come on this show in January. If he wants to do the cross promotion thing, that's fine too. But, when I said January, but it's going to be, I'm going to focus on it in January, but he's somebody, he's high on my list because I think we would just have fun, like, talking about music and just being in a studio, because if it wasn't for the time I spent in a studio with a friend of mine who was like trying to be like a local rapper, and he was actually paying decent money to go to a studio, like, I would always kind of sit there with the engineer, and that's how I really started to want to do this even before I knew about podcasting.
You know, it's funny that we're on this topic now, because I heard you talk about the Talk Boy with Koo, and honestly, like, when you talked about, like, just like kind of recording yourself with the Talk Boy, they made a lot of sense. I'd never had a Talk Boy, actually. And now I have one tattooed on me, but I've never had a physical Talk Boy. But I had like this little, I don't even know what you'd call it, but it was like it was like a tape recorder, and it had like a little microphone, and it was pretty big, but it was still portable.
What color was it?
And when I was a kid, what's up?
What color was it?
Oh man, it was a bunch of different colors. It was like, I remember red, yellow, blue, green, and blue. It was like the most 90s Fisher Price toy a kid could have, probably.
Dude, I wonder if it's like the same one I had, because like before I had the Talk Boy, I had, you know, a tape recorder that had like, you know, the built-in mic, like not one that was like you couldn't move, like it had a cord and everything. If we're talking about the same one, that would be the most craziest like thing ever. Because I kind of forgot about it until you started like, oh, I had this tape recorder. I'm like, oh my god, dude, so did I.
I'm trying to think. I feel like the screen of the microphone was yellow. I feel like it had like a yellow cord.
I remember,
and it was probably damn near about a foot tall.
I remember mine being dominantly red, but I know there was other colors, but that's the main color I remember.
Red and yellow are the ones that are sticking out for me. When we get off the phone, I'm going to Google this, because I want to see if I can find it. Because what I used to do is I was like, honestly, and like, this is crazy. I never even put these two things together, but I used to just like sit there and I would play with my wrestling action figures, and I would do commentary like into it, and I record it on a tape. And I never really went back and listened to it, but I just did it. And now I do commentary. Like, it's crazy. Never even put those two things together until just now.
I'm kind of Googling it right now, but there's like a bunch of things that come up. And a lot of them have, a lot of them have red, a lot of them have white.
I feel like, man, I wish I could remember the exact color scheme.
Dude, I don't know about you, but this is kind of like halfway off topic, is I'll think of something that I had in my childhood, and I'll try to Google search it, or I'll try to find it on eBay. Like, I remember I had a Super Nintendo growing up, and we had, I think, 2 regular controllers, and then my dad bought this, like, special controller. Like, it had a better fit. Like, it still had all the same buttons and everything, but it was supposed to, like, feel a little bit better. And I remember going on, like, Google one day and, like, scrolling after a while, like, I found them, like, oh my god. Like, this is what I had. I know it for sure. And I'll just randomly think like, oh, I remember I had this. Let me see if I can find what this was.
I will actually go a step further. And I do this actually quite a bit with one specific thing being crash dummies. I will eBay them and Google them. And if I still haven't scratched the itch enough, I will YouTube reviews on certain things.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because like, I just like, I guess I'm like really nostalgic in the sense of like, things that I had as a kid, because I went through a point in my life where I had to sell a lot of stuff for money to like eat and shit.
Yeah.
So like anything that I had, like I just like never really got attached to through like my late teens and like early 20s. The attachment just wasn't there. I knew if I needed to get rid of it, I could. So like every now and then I'll just like really go back, and I'll get like, for some reason, crash dummies are like one of the things that I do it the most with, just because I didn't have a lot of them, but they were like the coolest toys I had when I was a kid, because I mean, they were toys that you got to break and put back together.
Yeah.
And yeah, like crash dummies were the main ones. And then there were these other things. Shit, I can't remember what they were called, but they had, little like stones in their chest, and you could like move their arms and it would make this click noise and the stone would light up. Damn, I wish I could remember I don't think they were called stone cutters. I can't remember. But those are like the two things that I would like Google and YouTube the most for a while. Super random.
Like, I always have like a crazy like eBay saved search, or not saved searches, but what I'm watching. That's what it is. And like I'm looking through mine right now. Like, with it being Christmas, I pulled out like my favorite ornaments. The first time I got to put it on a tree in like over 5 years. And it's this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles bulb. And like I did a Google search on it, and there's like 10 of them with different designs. And
wow.
And I was like, oh, I need to buy the other 9. Like,
I saw you post that on Instagram, and I had it was either Instagram or Twitter.
Instagram.
I had a Ninja Turtle one, and I feel like I had a Power Ranger one that was fairly similar.
Yeah. But yeah, there was like 10 other designs. And I ended up looking for them on eBay, and I think to get all 10, there was 2 different things being sold, but it was going to actually complete it. The only one missing was the one that I owned. It was going to cost like $100, and I'm like, can't really afford that right now, but I'm going to keep looking, and then like maybe by next Christmas I'll have the whole set.
That'd be cool. Oh, by the way, I feel like a total piece of shit because I heard you talk about your love of Atom Bomb and the Atom Bomb Hasbro. I just sold all of my Hasbros, and a friend of mine gifted me an Atom Bomb Hasbro. Had I known how much you like Atom Bomb and how much like you just look for his stuff, I would have just given that to you. I would have just mailed it to you. But I had no clue, and now I'm just like, fuck. I wish I still had that because I would just mail it up to you.
The crazy thing, like, I'm not a huge fan of his, but like some of his merch, especially the Bret Hart shades, that I remember seeing in the catalog. I was like, oh, these are just the Bret Hart shades. Oh, okay. And then, like, obviously his run was very short, maybe a couple years, and like him being a face was even like obviously even shorter. But the merch that they had was just so random, and that later run of Hasbro's are hard to find. And I think I wanted the whole, like, at least what I considered the set, the football, the glasses, and the figure. The glasses aren't on eBay anymore. The football's not on eBay anymore. I mean, if I had the figure, that'd be great, but I don't know. I appreciate if you would have, like, that would have been great, but luckily I'm not like, it's not like I'm trying to figure out something I'm like, oh my God, you had, okay. There's one Funko Pop that I'm missing of one of my collections, and if I could find it, that it wasn't going to cost me an arm and a leg, I would buy it. And I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan. And of the original movie, I'm only missing one, and it's an Egon Spengler in the Ecto-1, and Egon, and I think the Ecto-1 too has like slime on it. That goes for anywhere between $300 and $600.
Jesus Christ.
I have watched it go up in price. The only thing that I have even remotely close to price, and I'm waiting on when I finally sell it, I have a flocked bunny suit Ralphie.
Oh, shit.
I bought it.
Does Koo know that?
No, we didn't talk about that. I bought it for $20 off of some friends of mine who are going through hard times. As of right now, actually, I'll look it up just to double check, because I use the Pop price guide, and it gives you like a rough estimate of, you know, what stuff is worth. And last time I checked, it was like over $200.
God.
And for a while, when it started to go up to like close to 100, I used to like jokingly with my one friend and be like, here's the price that it was now. Like, I paid 20 and it's now worth 100, now worth 150. Just like a fun joke, because I bought it just to help them out. Like, I like the Christmas story, but it was like, I wasn't trying to collect them, but it was the only one that they had that I'd pay money for that I was somewhat interested in.
Man, that's crazy. Like, part of me, like, Pops are cool. I had to, like, get out because there were just so many that I was like, once I got one, I wanted the series. So I finally just had to be like, no. And I sold most of mine. I think the only ones I have now are the Home Alone set that Brittany got me.
Nice.
And maybe a Freddy and Jason, and maybe like one more. I don't even think I kept a Macho Man one. I think I sold that one too. But yeah, like, part of me is just like, is the bubble going to pop, and is it going to be like Beanie Babies, or is this actually going to be a thing where, like, I feel like they've outlasted Beanie Babies.
They have.
God, that's crazy.
The Ralphie is worth $220 according to Pop Price Guide.
Jesus.
And I paid $20 for it. I think what the difference between Pops and Beanie Babies, that I know I've had this conversation with people, is the fact of, like, Beanie Babies were generic. Like, here's, like, they had, like, a bunch of different dogs, a bunch of different cats, maybe a couple ducks. And, like, there was nothing they could build off of, but with Pops, there's licenses. And I feel like, I mean, granted, there's people out there that are like, oh, I have to have them all. Like, there are categories of Pops that I'm like, I don't want to even want to own them all. Like, I'm not a Star Wars fan, but I know that's one of them that they pump out Pops for like crazy, and I don't want that. Like, right now in my office, like, I have the Boondock Saints Pops, and the only reason why I even bought them, like, I like the movies, but I was at, ironically, one of the Walmarts in Knoxville, and they had both of them sitting right next to each other. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll buy them both because boom, there's a set done. Like, I have those.
Yeah, and when do you ever find the set of anything right in front of you?
Yeah, I think because it was like just a 2 set, and I'm like, oh, actually, I'll get to that. I found one other time, but like in my office right now, I got those 2. I got a Mr. Rogers one, Scarface, the full Tommy Boy set, and Wreck-It Ralph, and then like a couple Thanos ones. Other than that, like, I have, like, they're just boxes right now in the my closet, which it's not like I'm not interested anymore. I just don't have like bookshelves or anything. Like, my office, there's like a corner that's just nothing but like plastic tubs full of shit. But the other time that I did find a full set, I went into a Walmart and they had all 3 Real Monsters.
Oh, man.
And I just looked at them all. I grabbed them and just put them in the cart, and I was like, okay, we're done. I got them all.
I think I found a complete set twice, and they weren't Funkos. When I first really got into collecting, like, wrestling action figures in my adult years, I walked into a Kmart one day randomly when those were still a thing down here, and I found, I forget what series it was, but I found Hawk and Animal, and I was like, well, I know one of these is going to be the rare one out of the 2, and you never find both of them at the same time, so I just bought them both. Definitely didn't have the money to do that, and just did it anyway. And then the other set that I found was the pull-string Hasbros. I walked into a store we have here called Great Escape, and I just looked on the shelf behind the counter, and I saw Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior, and if you know me, you know I don't care about Hulk Hogan at all. I saw Ultimate Warrior, and I bought him for like $10, I think. Uh-huh. And I was talking to a buddy of mine who has the most ridiculous luck with Hasbros and has probably one of the most extensive Hasbro collections outside of like Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins and all that. And I was telling him what I found, and he was like, did they have Hulk Hogan? And I said, yeah. He said, you better fucking go back and get that because that's a complete set and you're never going to find that again. Wow. So the next day I went back and they had it and I bought it and I held on to them for a few years. I actually just recently sold them with my Hasbros. And yeah, that's like the 2 times that I've ever found like a complete set at one time.
I just love the Hasbro set, or just, you know, those don't have like it's a set, but I don't know. Like,
they're so cool.
Like, I have my parts of childhood. Like, I just recently went through this, like, talking with a friend of mine who, friend of the show, like, he's on there, his name's Stacy, and he has a podcast called Super Fantastic, and he recently did an episode talking about He-Man to show support. Like, I've never been a fan of He-Man, and I still listened to him, but when I had a conversation with him, I was like, yeah, like, He-Man, G.I. Joe, and Transformers were, like, those franchises that were really big either right before I was born or as I was a baby. So, like, I didn't really know much about them, but, like, I connected with Ninja Turtles and Ghostbusters, Inspector Gadget, and then, like, the next era in my life, I remember Darkwing Duck, Captain Planet, and then I got into wrestling figures. And what was it? I was like 1990, I want to say 5. I bought, like, only ones that I ever bought in the store were, and I don't remember which one was my first one. There was a Punching Hulk Hogan, there was Undertaker, Razor Ramon, and Brett. And then we had, like, a friend of the family who, like, their one son was, like, late teenage years, and he had a bunch of Hasbros still in a box and with a ring. And I got to go over there one day and just be handed this box full of figures. And there was like Macho Man, Ultimate Warrior, Tugboat, the Rockers. There's a bunch. Like, if I look at a figure, I can tell you whether I had it in the set or not. And I don't know what I did with them, but that was a regret that I didn't have them. And I also had 2 different rings. There was the one that I got with the set, which was the rings that had the platform on it, like for the ring post. And then one that I got, or no, they didn't have those. Then I got one off of a friend a couple years ago after that. I mean, not a couple years ago, but a couple years after that, that had the platforms. Because I remember seeing his and going, mine doesn't have that. Like, what's going on? And like, he hooked me up. But yeah, they're just so nostalgic.
If you had the yellow ring, then you had some money.
No, it was the blue WrestleMania WWF ring. The one that I got from my friend of the family, it came with the belt and the American flag. The one that I got from my friend, it was just the ring.
God, dude, I hunted that part of the reason I decided to finally sell my collection was the fact that I knew I was never going to get the Hasbro action figure title belt for a reasonable price, and I just couldn't justify paying the prices that I saw for that belt. Like, for some reason I could with a figure, but with the belt, I was like, I can't do it. Just cannot do it. And I was just like, you know what? I'm never going to get that. And I actually had a Hasbro ring and I sold it. And there was Purple Trunks Ultimate Warrior. I knew I was never going to get that one. So I was like, you know what? I've had these. It's been a good run. I need room for my VHS tapes. It's time to clear this space out.
The White Trunks Ultimate Warrior is my favorite.
Oh yeah, that one. I feel like that's like the perfect Ultimate Warrior action figure because he's got his hands up. He looks like he's about to like come down and shake ropes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a damn good figure.
The tassels, the hair, it's like perfect. Like compared to the other ones, they're just, I don't know. Like the Purple Trunks one, like I think the big figure looks cool, but like the small one's like eh. And then there's the one that just does the, I don't even call it the head.
It's got like the lever on the back where it like pops up. I hate that figure. I hate that mold.
Dude, same. Like I can remember so many that had that. Like at Jimmy Snuka and one of the Rockers I know had it too. And
Shawn Michaels.
Wasn't Shawn Michaels. I could hated that one.
Actually, I think they both may have had it. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I do. You are correct, and one of the Rockers definitely had it. Yeah, I hated that, and I always had I had a Jimmy Snuka that had that mold, and I had the hardest time getting him to stand.
Yeah, I think some of the new. I think one of the new ones has it too, and I
think it's Sting.
Yeah, and I was like, ugh, why did we bring that one back?
Yeah, not a good look.
I think it's funny
and Triple H has it too, actually. I think the Triple H one has it.
I have to double check that one. That's the other thing too, like, that kind of annoys me. Like, the waves for those have been shit of, like, getting into stores. Like, I remember the first one was, like, everywhere. And I'm really kicking myself in the ass after listening to the Major Wrestling Figure podcast this past week, or as of was recording last week. I remember seeing the Roman Reigns figure, and I was like, oh my god, that's like the Hulk Hogan one I had with the punch. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool, because I don't know, I mean, Roman does the punch too, but I'm like, Roman, Hulk Hogan, you know, two big guys, you know, champions and all this stuff. Like, they just were a lot alike in my head. And then coming to find out, like, for some reason, now it's worth like $100. I'm like, motherfucker, I could have bought that figure I don't know how many times. And now you're telling me it's worth $100. Motherfucker.
Of course it is. God damn it. It's always the one you least expect.
Like, I wanted to start collecting them, and then the one that I really want, and this can get into another thing that we both love, is like the Series 2 with like Kane and Mankind, and I think those are the main two I want. I forget who else is in the series, but I'm like, dude, that Kane is awesome.
That Kane is legit one of my favorite toys ever. It's so sick. And like what I sold, like I had not most, but I had a good amount of like those retros.
Yeah.
I sold those with my Hasbros, and I kept that Undertaker and Kane because that Kane is just one of the sickest action figures ever.
Yeah. You know, another thing when it comes with Kane that I'm pissed, like, how expensive it is, only because you have to have both parts, and that's the Maximum Sweat figure.
Oh, man. Oh, those figures. Those trash-ass figures. I had, like, I think I actually had the Kane one when I was a kid.
I did too. But if you go on eBay, last time I checked, almost all of them are the figure without the mask. That goes for like $10, $15, maybe $20. If you have the mask, which normally all the open ones don't, you have to buy it in the case, box, whatever. Like those are like $80. And I'm like, I really want that figure again, but I don't want to pay $80 for it.
Do you want to hear a really depressing story?
Okay, shoot.
So, I used to be a delivery driver for Papa John's when I was like 19. And, of course I had a Nintendo 64 growing up. But my friends and I had we went through this weird phase where we just really wanted an N64. So I worked with this guy and we were talking one day. He's like, I still have mine. I'll sell it to you for like $20. I was like, okay. So he brings me the Nintendo 64, 2 controllers, and a couple games. One of which was Banjo-Kazooie. And I was like, I don't give a shit about this game. So I took it to like one of these secondhand stores, and I was trying to sell it with like some other stuff, and they're like, "Oh, we don't really want this." And I was like, "Well, you can just keep it, whatever, because I'm never gonna play it." Dude, no shit. I go to a used game store a week later, and they're selling Banjo-Kazooie for like $100.
Yeah.
And I was just like, "You have to be kidding me right now. There's no way. No way."
I think all the secondhand stores around me have finally caught on to eBay. As weird as that sounds, because how long eBay's been around, that I think when they get some of the bigger priced, whether it be games, movies, or albums, they will put that kind of price tag on it. Like, for example, I grew up and I had the stage of where I listened to ICP and everything psychopathic. There's a handful of those albums that are no longer in print. And some of them, like I was just on eBay, and like a couple of them, which came out in like the early 2000s, are going for like, highest I've seen was like $60. Realistically, I should say 60. There's a couple of people wanting way more than that, and I'm like, you're not getting that fucking much money. But I'm like, 60 is more, a little bit more in the realm, but I'm still like motherfucker. And bringing it back to going to these secondhand stores, a lot of these albums that I was looking for that I know no longer in print aren't there. And I'm like, you're telling me that nobody is turning these in, or do you get them and like does someone sell them? Like what's going on with it? Because some of these places have like a lot of albums that are, number of years old.
Similar to that, I have a friend who has a ridiculous collection of Jason X DVDs, and it just became like a running joke between him and some friends. And they, every time they would go to one of these like secondhand used media stores, they would just buy a copy of Jason X on DVD because it was like $1.95. So this dude just texted me one day, and he has like over 40 copies of Jason X on DVD. They've got like a VHS tape. They've got, I think it's like a screenplay, like in book format, and something else. They have it on like some other weird format. He texted me one day, and he's like, "So you know how I have all these Jason X DVDs?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "I think I may actually have stumbled into some money because they don't print it anymore. They don't press it anymore." He's like, and I have 40-something copies of it. And it just started as a joke. Like, they never expected that. And it's like, I've looked it up. It, oddly enough, like, in my, like, VHS collecting frenzy, that's one of the ones that I've been looking for. And I used to see it all the time years ago when I first was buying VHS tapes just because they were cheap. and I had a working VCR, and that was one that I would see for like, no shit, 10 cents at the store. And now it's like, I mean, it's not like expensive, but it's expensive for like a VHS tape. It's like, you can find it for like anywhere from like $5 to $15. And like, I have my limits on what I'll spend on certain VHS tapes.
Mm-hmm.
I'd pay $5 for Jason X. I'm not going to pay $15 for Jason X. But it's just like, it's crazy how like, he never expected anything to come from this. And now, you know, they just don't make that anymore. And he's got 40 something copies of it.
I had this conversation, I know, with a friend of mine back in October. Like, what people really love is dead media.
Yep.
Like, that's where you make the money. Like, I still have a fraction of my collection from when I was into ICP. And the stuff that I have was the stuff that I treasured, because I did have my CD collection stolen from me when I went to the Gathering of the Juggalos. The first year it was in my area. And so the stuff that I kept at home was the stuff that, like, obviously made it through all the years, because they had somewhat of a value to me. Some of those CDs are worth about what I paid for it. But the things that are worth the most are the cassette tapes, because I still have a handful of cassette tapes. Those are the ones that go way more. And I'm like, what the fuck is it with dead media? You might be actually stumbling upon your own gold mine with getting into VHSs. Like that whole nostalgia train could potentially come back. Like, I don't know if like they're gonna reproduce VHSs, but I know even when you started collecting them, I was kind of like, I don't want to go into a full collection mode. I want to get some of my favorite VHSs as a kid. I kind of want to do one Christmas where all I watch is like Christmas VHS tapes, like some of the ones that I grew up with, like Home Alone 1, 2, the Santa Claus, stuff like that. So it just like brings a little bit more of that nostalgia to, you know, Christmas.
So before I go on to the VHS, you actually said something in your interview with Koo where you were talking about wanting to record an episode of Wrestling Cheers on a Talkboy and have it on cassette.
Yeah.
It's so insane to me that you said that. I like flipped the fuck out at work, because I always told Brittany and Wilkes, one thing that I wanted to do was, like, in hardcore and punk, bands still put out cassette tapes because they're cheap, they're easy, and it's physical media. And in that community, people just love physical media, whether it's records. So people still get CDs, but it's mostly records or tapes.
Yeah.
I always wanted to like pick out one of our best episodes and have it converted to a cassette tape and do essentially what you said and just give it out. Cause I was like, who the fuck wants to buy a cassette tape of a podcast, you know? So it tripped me out that you said that, cause that's something that I always said to them that I wanted to do. I just didn't know how to go about it, you know? Like, essentially I wanted to put it on like a store, like a big cartel, but not charge anything for it. Just have it there so people could like order it and essentially just pay shipping and I just send it to them. But I just never did it. But it's actually, so going to VHS now, they may still be doing it, but I know it's like, you know, up to like 2016, there are companies that still put out VHS tapes, and I have one of them. I found this movie randomly called The Barn, and they released it, I'm pretty sure, digitally, on DVD and VHS, and I found it at one of those secondhand media stores for like 99 cents. And I looked it up like right after I got it, because the thing that struck me was it looked old. It looked like it was from like the 80s. So I grabbed it and I was like, this will be a fun watch, whatever. And I looked it up, and I want to say the VHS tape was going for like $30.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and I paid 99 cents for it. And it's actually like, I find really weird movies, and Koo actually asked me the other day, he was like, how do you find the movies that you watch? And I legitimately don't know. Like, sometimes I just see people post their VHS collections, and I'm like, oh, that title looks cool. I'm going to see if I can find that somewhere and watch it. Or like, when I first had Shudder, I would just go back and look for stuff that I never heard of that had like a cool name, like Maniac Cop. Like, to me, that just sounds interesting, and I want to watch it because it's going to be exactly what you expect. It's going to be a Maniac Cop. So yeah, like I just watch a bunch of random shit, and now I just look for the VHS tapes of it.
Is that kind of why you miss video stores.
Oh, dude. Video stores for me were like the pinnacle of like just being a kid. Like, I had friends that I hung out with, but like when I was in elementary school, I wasn't like going over to kids' houses. I had one kid that I hung out with the most, but it's because we lived in these apartments and he lived right across the breezeway from us. So we could hang out pretty much whenever. But I was always that kid that would rent the same wrestling tape multiple times or the same wrestling video game multiple times, or there were Simpsons games, and what was the other one? I had a couple different video games I would rent for like Sega Genesis. But just like, you can't replicate that feeling of going to a video rental store and like hoping and praying that they had what you wanted. And if they didn't have it, then you knew you only had a certain amount of time to pick out something else that was going to satisfy you.
Yeah.
And dude, I'll just never forget the feeling of like going with my parents and either getting a movie or getting a game, and every now and then they would let me get candy with it too. And just going into like Movie Gallery, or what were the other ones? We did Blockbuster every now and then. And then Hollywood Video was like a super treat.
Yeah.
Just going there and getting a game or a movie and candy, it was just the coolest. It like, I miss it a lot. And I've actually had a couple friends tell me that they've looked into starting like a rental service again. And for a while we had one close to where Brittany and I used to live. Mm-hmm. I don't remember what it was called, but there was still a place where you could rent DVDs. And my old roommate and I actually did it. We went and rented a couple of DVDs just to do it. And we watched them, and it was still just as cool as when I was a kid. Yeah, I miss going to those stores and being able to pick out a game. And I actually shared a story on Twitter recently where after my parents divorced, my mom got me a PlayStation 2 for my birthday, and she didn't have enough money to get me a game, so she rented me, I forget which one it was, but it was one of the SmackDown games to go with the PlayStation 2, so I would at least have something to play.
The funny thing is, because I mentioned it, that we have a shit ton of family videos up here. Like, almost, I feel like every major town has one. And they're, like, legitimately everywhere. And then I'm like, he has to have some family videos down there. And I looked, and there's, like, in your area, there's, like, 2 in Nashville, 1 in somewhere in Kentucky. And I'm like, wow. Like, that's where we could go to still feel it. The funny thing is, like, I know I don't do it as much anymore. Mainly because, like, when it comes to movies, I'm normally going to movie theaters. Like, I enjoy that more than anything. Video games, I don't play as much, but I do know, like, there was a handful of games that would come out, and I go, well, let me rent it for a couple days and, like, see if I like it. If I don't like it, I don't worry about it, but if I like it, I'll return it and then just go out and buy the actual game. But, yeah, I haven't done that in years. But it definitely was something fun. I think it even goes back even more to the 90s. Because, like, technically, you know, the 2000s, that, like, all the stores were still around, but in the 90s, you know, with the VHSs, and there wasn't, like, this, we have to guarantee that we have these videos available. So sometimes, you'd go in looking for one, and it wasn't there, and you had your chain stores, like your Blockbusters, your Hollywood Video, and then, like, our local grocery store, like, they had, like, a little section, depending on which store you went to. Like, my local one was really small, but the town over had, like, a whole room, like, video rental store dedicated to it. And then there was a part that I brought up to you, was, like, there was so many, like, hole-in-the-wall video stores. And I think if I would compare it to anything, fucking Clerks 1. Like, it was just these stores that were no chains, and it could be anything. And I will never forget, my dad was an appliance repairman, and we went over to somebody's house, and they had a video store in, like, their garage. Like, nowadays, like, nobody, like, oh yeah, like, the guy down the street has a bunch of DVDs. You want to go over to his place? No, nobody wants to fucking do that.
Man, like, I think about it more and more every day, how cool it was, like, being able to just walk into a video rental store. And actually, one of my best friends, when I was, I may have been like 16, he was 18 and working at a movie gallery, and he would just like grab, like, they could just grab DVDs and he would just bring them over. And like, we just got to watch all these movies for free, because he basically lived with us. My house was like the squatter house basically. And he would just bring DVDs over. We would just watch all these free movies. And yeah, just like it, actually, you know what? There may still be a Captain Video in the town next to the town where I pretty much grew up in Smyrna, Tennessee. I think it was called Captain Video, and I'm pretty sure it was a video rental store and a tanning salon. That may still be there. I'm not sure if it closed or not. But my buddy Eli and I from Music City Horror Podcast, whenever, I forget where we went, but we were somewhere outside of Nashville, I think on the south side of Middle Tennessee. We were VHS hunting, and we actually ran across a random Family Video, and we almost stopped, but then we ended up just going to like Goodwill or something. But it was really cool just to see that. And then he's the one that told me that Family Video is still around because rather than renting their properties, they bought them outright. So they own all their properties now.
Okay.
So that's how they're able to, still, they're not paying anything basically. That's how they're able to exist. And like, they do enough business to basically cover, any expenses they may have. So like it's funny how they were the smallest one, but the smartest one. They ended up buying all their properties, and now they're still around.
It's crazy just how all of those stores have just disappeared, and how, 20 years ago, if someone said like, oh, one day, you're not going to have as many video stores, and, there's going to be these different ways to go to people. I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. Like, these stores are going to be around forever. Everybody's going to want to rent a video. And then, we went from VHSs to DVDs to Blu-rays, Blu-ray to digital, to where you don't even have to like have a physical copy. Like, that's where we are now. And now, like, the turnarounds for movies have drastically changed. Like, before, granted, it was because it came back out in theaters, but like, I remember Lion King, like, from when it came out in the theater to VHS was 9 months. But I think it was also, they did re-release it in like the winter, but still like 9 months, but that was normal.
Man, it's crazy how like the things from our childhood, like video rental stores and arcades, just like they're not there. Like, yeah, you got like Dave and Buster's, and actually there's an arcade up the road from me in this really horrible mall, but it's not like a real arcade. It's like something that used to be a store, and there's like all these arcade machines, but it's not like a real arcade like you used to have. Those are like the two things that I miss the most from being a kid. It's just arcades, and because there used to be an arcade in the mall not too far from where I lived called Tilt, and there was just walls of pinball, and they had all the good arcade machines, and then there was a bar. Yeah, I guess it was like technically a bar where like I could go in with my dad and we could like play pool or like play arcade games or do go-karts, but he could also like drink. And that was really cool. I miss shit like that.
Like, I never really got any good arcade growing up. Like, maybe, there'd be like small mall arcade, or like the movie theater might have a little arcade or a couple arcade games, but never like that full-blown room of just all these different arcade games and pinball games. I do know, the thing that I loved, side note, I had a friend whose dad made good money growing up. He still technically does as a ticket agent. But in his garage, he had 3 pinball machines. And to us growing up, that was awesome. There was one called Taxi, which was more of a little bit older, but not hardcore old. But then he also had Last Action Hero and Addams Family.
Oh, the Addams Family pinball machine is classic.
Dude, that was my favorite. Like, that's the one I gravitated towards when I first went over there. I'm like, oh, I'm playing this one. This one's fucking awesome.
Man, I had this friend who's from California, and I don't remember if her family owned like a chain of arcades or I think it was a video store / arcade, if I'm not mistaken. But we like hung out, and when she was telling me about it, and I was like, it sounds like you had the coolest childhood ever. It's like, you could tell she definitely didn't take it for granted, because she was just like, yeah, our garage is like full of arcade machines and like VHS tapes and movies and all this like posters and all this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, it sounds so cool. I forget how we got on the subject, but I was just talking about how like VHS tapes used to come with cool stuff. Like the Free Willy tapes came with like the necklace. Dude. And then the Space Jam tape came with the coin. And I was like, man, I wish I had that coin. Well, she went back to visit her family for whatever reason. And she came back, and when we hung out after that, she gave me the Space Jam coin that I still have somewhere. I think it's in my car. And like, you just don't get that anymore. Like,
yeah,
I really miss just companies going the extra mile to give you something small like that. I mean, it's a coin. Like, it's not even, I'm pretty sure it's not even like real metal, but it's just a shitty little coin. Yeah. And you were so stoked on that stuff when you were a kid.
I'm trying to remember the last thing I got like that with Walmart. They've been selling some Christmas Blu-rays, and they come with mini Funko Pop keychain of whatever the movie it is. Like, if you bought Christmas Story, still don't want to say set, but if you bought the Christmas Story one, came with Bunny Suit Ralphie. If you bought but one of the Grinch movies, one came with a Grinch keychain, the other one came with Max. And there was those. I know when I bought the Mick Foley DVD, it came with a Mr. Sacco, where the face is actually like sewn on. And
that's rad.
Yeah, I found that like, I forget where, and I was like, oh, I'm keeping this. I have it, the sock still somewhere, because I think that's so awesome. But when you mentioned that, I forgot about the Free Willy. I definitely forgot about the Space Jam coin. I had that and even forgot about it. But the one that I remember that you didn't mention, but you probably remember too, Indian in the Cupboard.
What did that come with?
If I'm correct, it came with a plastic Indian. The VHS case was like a brownish goldish, so it kind of looked like the cupboard. And I think it came with a key that you would use to, quote, open the VHS. Like, if you get a chance, Google that. It might have came with a little cowboy, too. But I remember, like, I'd never owned Indian in the Cupboard. I think I might have known people who did, but I remember seeing that in the store, and even like, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And that is something you don't see anymore. But of all that, I think the Free Willy one was my favorite. Like, I was never a big Free Willy fan, but I kind of wanted the necklace.
Yeah, no, I was the exact same way. And I feel like Free Willy 1 and 2 both came with something. But yeah, that Space Jam coin, I'm trying really hard to remember the Indian in the Cupboard stuff. It's probably been like 25 years since I've seen that movie. But that Space Jam coin always just stuck out in my head for whatever reason. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that's in my car. I'm pretty sure it's like in my center console under my parking brake. Man, I miss stuff like that. I'm the type of person, though, I get really excited when I order a shirt from somewhere and they throw in just like a sticker. Like, just doing that is so cool to me.
Yeah, it's like when I bought that stuff from Sobros, they sent me just a bunch of stickers. Then they threw, like, because I did ask for it before they put it on the store, the NWO style beer koozie. Like, I thought, like, that was just so awesome. Which, you didn't mention this online, but I want to know if you enjoyed the stickers that came with all the shit that I sent you.
Oh, yeah, actually, that Big Twan sticker, I don't want to put that on anything because I'm afraid, like, if I do, I'm either going to lose it, it's going to mess up the sticker, or, like, I almost just want to, like, I don't know if I can find a frame for that, but, like, that sticker is incredible. Like, that's probably my favorite sticker that I have.
Like, when I was working on the stuff to send to you, every time, like, a new sticker would come up, and be passed around AIW, I would be like, all right, like, give me two, because, like, I wouldn't tell people why, but I'm like, there was that. So, like, there one was the John Cena thrift store jobber sticker, and then the other one was the Big Twan Tucker one. The only one that you missed out on that came out just after this last AIW show is Stacy, bringing him back up again. He had holographic stickers made of the tiger painting at Our Lady of Mount Carmel, if you remember it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And ironically, like, it was passed out at the last Our Lady of Mount Carmel show.
Man.
Yeah, it's the crazy things that, like, people come up with for stickers, but yeah. Like, because I know when you posted it, like, you posted, like, all the VHSs and everything, which is cool, but I'm like, he didn't mention that, the stickers, because I'm like, the stickers was, like, this really cool, just added bonus.
No, I actually have... Where are they? They should be on this table. Where are they? I have so much random stuff on this table. Where are they? Are they in there?
The Big Twan stickers. I just found a bunch of pins. The Big Twan stickers are, like, now Twan's, like, sells them.
He should. Yeah. I almost feel like that should be an 8x10.
Yeah, he should get it done as an 8x10. That'd be fucking great. That's the thing. He's so animated. I love him.
Man, do you want to hear a funny story about his match with Brett from PWF? Well, actually, I think he told you.
Did he tell me on the show, or did he tell me privately? I can't remember.
So, all right, I'm just going to tell you, because I don't think Brett's going to have an issue with me telling you.
If he does, he can take it up with you, not me.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. I've been punked by him several times. So he's like telling me about the match, because every time Brett has a match, I try to always check in with him to see how it goes. So we're talking, and he was like, yeah, Twan's a good kid. You know, he's really good. He was like, I couldn't get that fire out of him. So Brett was like, we're going back and forth, and Brett hauled off and smacked the piss out of Twan.
Yeah.
And Twan's a big dude, and not many people are going to do that, but Brett smacked the shit out of Twan, and then Twan, like, fired up, and Brett, if you watch the video, you can see it, but Brett told me, Brett goes, I smacked the shit out of him, I saw it, he said, I looked at him, I go, there it is, let's fucking do this. And he was like, from that second on, he's like, I knew we were going to have a great match, because I finally got it out of him, and then we just went at it. I was like, that sounds about right.
That was a good match, and I was happy I was there for.
Yeah, I think there's a huge upside to Twan.
He's just starting out, just such a little baby rookie, and he's going to have so much room to grow. That's one thing I love about him. I just found that sticker. It was under some index cards that I had on the table that I used for ring announcing notes. God, even John Bourne's face in this picture is just incredible, because he just has, like, the nastiest look on his face from what you can see, and Twan's face is just, like, pure terror. If I'm correct, I believe it's a picture taken by Caden. That wouldn't surprise me. Yeah. Man, that's such a good sticker. I'm so afraid to put it on anything. Put it right there. This is something that I've mentioned. Like, I think it's crazy. You can talk about, like, nostalgia stuff coming back. Pins. When the fuck did this become a thing? Like, I asked the question on Twitter, but everybody was giving me more of, like, a... Maybe from... I feel like you caught shit for that. Dude, I caught so much shit. And then, like, I wasn't... Context is one thing. Like, written context can be taken so many different ways. And I was just going, like, looking back at a question going, man, I grew up with pins. Like, my dad had them on his hat and everything. Like, it was more like patriotic stuff, but I remember as a kid going to our local fair, and there was always places where you could buy pins and just whatever you wanted. Like, you could find a pin for it. Right. And I'm trying to figure out, like, what caused this resurgence in them. And people were giving me, like, well, because they're cheap to make, and what were some of the other reasons? Like, they were giving me reasons more from, like, why people were buying them now. And I'm like, okay, I get it, but, like, when did this become, like, popular to sell? I look at it as the Razor Ramon shirt. That shirt was an obscure shirt. Like, I remember loving it as a kid. And then a Kardashian wears it, and everybody wants it, and WWE brings it back out. So I look at, okay, a Kardashian wearing it is what caused this spike. where's that spike for pins? What was it? Like, I don't hate it. I'm just looking back at it like, man, you would have told me when I was a teenager that everybody would be buying pins, and like, you can get them everywhere. Like, even, you know, WWE selling them at shows. Football games are now selling them at the stadiums for the games, and I'm like, where did this come from?
Yeah, it's really strange, and I say it's really strange as I'm looking at that same table where I just found that Big Twan sticker, and let me look at the pins that I have on this table. I've got a giant Ghostface from Scream enamel pin. I have a Monsters Outside Legacy of Nostalgia VHS pin. I've got a Macho Madness pin from my friend Eric, who does Gypsy Curse pins. Mm-hmm. I have a Sup pin because even we hopped on the train. I have another Scream pin. Like, dude. Oh, this one's actually really cool. So it's this Goulsville enamel pin, and it's like this devil face and like the style of like the old Halloween masks where they're just like the plastic masks with the string that goes like over the back of your head. Brittany and I both got one in Salem. I think she got the Bride of Frankenstein, and I got like this devil one. Dude, like, honestly, it's a really good question because I don't even know, and I have quite, like, my whole backpack is covered in pins at this point, but like, I could even tell you what sparked the resurgence in enamel pins. It's insane. Is
it like the progression of buttons? Because I mean, I felt like
that's all I can really think of.
Yeah, like for a while, that's what like a lot of people had. That was like, you can get these little buttons, like Hot Topic. I mean, they still have it to where, you know, there's just a bowl or a big container of like, all right, there's a bunch of pins. You can get them, or buttons for small ones, or $3 for $0.25, or however much they are anymore. I don't even, or $5 for $1, whatever. And like, I look at my newer messenger bag that I'm starting to take to shows, and like, I have some of my Loot Crate pins, which I think that was something that helped spike it. And then other pins, but then I have like buttons. Like, I have a Marion Fontaine button. I have a Kick Out at 2. I think I have 2 buttons, and then like I have a Veda button. Now, like, nobody's doing buttons, but now we're on pins, which, I mean, if that's what it is, fine, but it's just a weird question that I'm really trying to, like, what caused it?
Me being me, I still have a huge love for, like, those buttons. Because, like, when I was going to punk and hardcore shows, if you bought a shirt, you would get, like, essentially a handful of buttons for free. And it would be just to, like, give to your friends. The same would be for, like, stickers, but buttons were always really cool. Even though I had nothing to put them on except for like hoodies and shit. And I actually, somewhere I still have a bunch of old buttons from when I was going to punk and hardcore shows. But I just put out those Wing ripoff logos that my friend Jason made for us. And I think we're going to do one on a shirt. And I think the other one, it's just, to me, it's such a good logo. I don't want to waste it. So I think whatever design we don't put on a shirt, I'm just dead ass going to put it on a button and just give them away.
I think it's kind of funny because that reminds me of like when I first met you and you had some Kick Out at 2 pins and you're just like, all right, here's a bunch. Bye. Okay, not bye, but
yeah,
like,
man.
You gave me a bunch, and I still have them. Like, I had 2 of them that are on my bag, which I have some pins that I need to go through. I have like almost all my Loot Crate pins, and I've been a Loot Crate subscriber for the WWE one since it started coming out, and about 6 months before that for the original form of Loot Crate. So I have like a bunch of pins that I could add to stuff that I don't.
Me giving you those pins is just like me being stuck in that like punk rock hardcore mentality of like, well, if I give these to people and they give them to friends, then, you know, that's just, you know, word of mouth, basically, you know, it's just going to help spread the word so I don't lose anything. That making buttons like costs next to nothing. I think you can get like 100 made for $20. I mean, I'm probably going to do that in the next few weeks. It's just like, I don't know. I love little shit like that. Like enamel pins and buttons and patches used to be a big thing for me. I used to buy a bunch of patches and stickers. I don't know what it is. Like, I remember you asking that question on Twitter about enamel pins, though, and I'm actually very curious to know what sparked the resurgence.
Yeah.
I would love, if anybody can tell us, I would love to know.
I don't know how to do it, but I know, like, you can look up, like, Google search history, and then you can, like, see, like, where it spikes. Like, I remember watching a video on fidget spinners, and it talked about how, like, it wasn't a term that was, Googled a lot prior to, like, the boom, and then, like, when the boom happened, like, you seen the spike where, like, little bit, and then just thousands upon thousands of people are Googling what the fuck a fidget spinner is. So, like, where did this go with enamel pins? Like, yeah, it was around in the 80s. It was around in the 90s. It was around in the 2000s, but, like, they weren't a big thing. So it's definitely a question that I have. And I know I think I'm going to eventually do pins for wrestling cheers. I'm not 100% sure yet. The thing that I'm working on, and they're getting done, I hope to have them, as of this recording, I hope to have them by the end of the week, or end of when this gets released by the end of the week, is I'm getting wrestling cheers glasses and, pint glasses and beer koozies made. Like, I'm getting a small...
Pint glasses and beer koozies? Man.
Like, I forget the price that I figured I'm going to sell them for. I have a separate price for both, but I want people just to buy them together for a discounted price, because it's actually, like, I'm selling them $4 for the koozie, $8 for the glass, but together $10. Just because, like, I just rather sell them. Like, I want to sell the pint glasses really for $10, and then be able to say, here's the koozie. But some people be like, well, I don't want the koozie. I'm like, well, just fucking take it. Like, I have a stack of koozies. And I think over the past, like, year and a half, like, that's been the one, like, if I'm going to put wrestling cheers on something, it's going to be something that's, like, somewhat related. It's going to be a pint glass and a beer koozie. Like, I think that's awesome.
I mean, that really makes sense for, like, the whole cheers aspect. Plus, like, I feel like those are just really cool pieces of merch. I remember when I saw Matt Tremont wrestle live, he had beer steins? Yeah, or not steins, but like beer mugs, basically. Yeah. And I always thought that was really cool. I think somebody else just did that too. I can't think of who it was though.
Like the clear glass beer mugs?
Yeah, like with the handle on them, like whenever they like give you like a frosty mug or whatever, he had those. I wish I could remember who else did it. Somebody else did it recently. Maybe it was Mance. Maybe not. Maybe that's wishful thinking on my part.
Sounds right, but I don't know if it is right. Just because Manson, beer mug.
Oh yeah, Mr. Lariats and Light Beers. Having that dude at Sup has been incredible.
God, there's so many people I want to see at Sup. Before I go back to the mug thing, when I the printer that I have making these is the girl that I went to high school with. I told her I want to do pint glasses, and she was like, "Well, do you want the mugs with the handles?" And I'm thinking, I might have you just do a couple for, like, me. But I'm like, nah, I'm like, the pint glasses look cool. I actually have a promotional pint glass that I got off of a local radio show. So I'm like, I kind of like that whole thing. But, yeah, fucking, like, sup with some of those people. Dude, I wish Magnum would have got to come down there.
Magnum was somebody that I wanted down here real bad. And when I saw Magnum, funny story, Magnum is actually somebody that I've never met. But when I saw him on AIW and with the production, I fell in love with the character. And him and I talked, had him on the podcast. Yeah. He told me about Marking Out, watched that. And him and I just stayed in pretty close contact, didn't talk all the time. But whenever I was like going through some shit, he would always check on me. Yeah. And he's just such a good dude. And I feel like anybody who's met him or talked to him just knows how good of a person he is. And he's one of the few people, and this is really rare, he's one of the few people in wrestling I don't think I've ever heard anything negative about. And I think there's a handful of people you can say that about in the world of wrestling. But yeah, he is someone we had plans for this is like exclusive shit. We had plans for him in 2019 to bring him in, and we were going to feature him as a singles wrestler, and just like really, get behind him down here. Cause I feel like personally, like me, if I saw him down here and I wasn't like running SUP, I would have just fallen in love with his whole character, the whole show. I feel like it would have been a perfect fit, because it's like, it's kind of out there for what we do, but it's also not. Because if you look like Cabana Man Dan, or like even Mance, like we do have guys who have like their own shtick. Magnum would have been one of those guys who just came in and like, you look at it, like I look at Dan and I get it. I look at Mance, I get it. I look at Magnum and it makes perfect sense. Like he should be larger than life, and he is, and he's also just one of the best dudes in the world.
Like I've always just pictured him doing the full entrance, like arms out and everything, like at a bar and with no barricade. Like I think that would have gone over well. Well, I don't know if everybody would have liked it, but like still, like just I think they would have gotten into it. Like I know when that was announced, that was one of the things I thought of. Like, oh man, he's never going to get to another Southern Underground Pro. That would just be the dream right there.
Yeah, we really wanted to find a way to work him in 2019, and that was one of the things that we had talked about. And then when we saw that, it was just like, fuck, like, I would rather him be healthy and be able to, spend time with his family and, play with his kids than come down for a couple of shows for us, because it's just bigger picture stuff, man. Like when you meet somebody or when you talk to somebody who's that genuine and that nice, you automatically just want the best for them and want them to be happy and successful in whatever path they choose, whether it's, wrestling or, theater and family life or, whatever it is. Like I have no doubt in my mind that whatever Magnum puts his mind to, he's going to be great at it. And just knowing that makes me happy.
All right. We've talked for an awful long time. We need to start wrapping this show up, and let's get into the Fave 5 questions.
Hey, this is Booker T, 5-time champ, and this is the Fave 5 questions. Now, can you
question number 1. Since you are a Halloween guy, I figured this is fitting. Addams Family or the Munsters?
Ooh, I think this might throw some people off, but Munsters.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I love the Munsters, man. I grew up watching the Munsters with my mom on TV Land. And like, don't get me wrong, I love the Addams Family, love the movies, love the cartoon. For some reason, though, the Munsters, I think maybe it's because like the Addams Family was pretty accessible.
Yeah.
Like the cartoon was, and the movies I feel like were always on, and then the video games. But for me, like Munsters was like straight up just TV Land. So I've always kind of been a person where if it's easily accessible, I like it. But if it's not as easily accessible, I'm in love with it. And like even now, the Munsters DVD set, it's like more than I want to pay. So yeah, I'm a Munsters guy.
It's definitely a question. There's no right or wrong answer because I feel like they're almost the same. They have their differences, but whatever you pick is whatever you pick. I think when I did this on Facebook, I think I'm more Munsters. I do like Addams Family though, but I'm more Munsters. Unless you're Brett and you think I say Adam Sandler. So
I heard that and I laughed so hard because I was like, I know. I was like, I'm 90% sure he's not a Munsters guy. And like, I feel like his answer sounded like he was going towards Munsters, but it didn't really make sense.
Yeah.
And then when it got clarified, I was like, that's incredible. I love it.
All right. Here's a question we don't ask too much, but perfect way to use it. When you sleep at night, do you sleep with your door open or door closed?
If I can, closed. I like freezing cold and pitch black, but I have a cat,
Oh God.
So
yeah.
if she's settled in, I can like sneak my way up and shut the door, and she'll pretty much be fine. But if she's not in bed by the time I lay down, or like by the time I'm about to fall asleep, then I have to keep it open at least until I know she's in and I get up to go to the bathroom. Then I can shut it. But I prefer shut.
Yeah, I've been a shut person my whole life, and then when me and my girlfriend moved in together, she was an open, so that was a fun like, what are we gonna do? And then eventually, like we agreed on like, all right, we'll do it with the door shut. And then when we got the new cat, for a while, like we had to go back and forth because we kept Zool and Dexter separate. Like if there was a night for where Zool was in the bedroom, Dexter was in our other bathroom, like chilling there. But if Dexter was in with us, Zool was in her cage in my office. Eventually, everybody came to like be fine. But Dexter, his big thing is, oh God, he annoys me with this. He's one of those like talking cats, where like he could be like off on his own, and you just hear from another room.
Yep.
And he'll do the same thing when like we're in bed, where it's not necessarily that he wants out, because if I let him out, he'll eventually just like be on the other side of the door doing the exact same thing. It's like him just talking.
Yep.
Or there's times where we'll be in the living room, he'll be in the dining room, like looking at the tree, just meowing, like he's talking to it. It's like, oh my God, dude.
Like my cat, if I open the door in the middle of the night and let her out and shut it, I won't just get the meow from the other side. She'll stick her paw under the door and like wiggle the door. So I have to get up.
Yeah, Dexter's
She's so needy.
Yeah, Dexter will do that too. And especially when he was a kitten, whatever room he would be in, or even like times like I would be in our main bathroom, like our that we have connected to the room. Like my girlfriend would be sleeping, and I would be like in there like doing whatever, and I'd like close the door. And like I have like pictures and video of Dexter kind of like reaching his paw under the door, kind of like, hey, what are you doing in there? Like, you're not out here with me.
Why can't I be in there?
Yeah, and it's just like, dude, I'm going to be out in like 2 minutes. Like everything's going to be fine. But yeah, it was fun because like I said, I grew up being closed, and when I found out like, oh no, like people sleep with their door open, I'm like, why? Like
I hate it. I hate it so much. Like no light, no heat, just like freezing cold. Usually like it's weird. Like even if I'm hot, I have to have something on me, like a sheet or something.
Yep.
So I usually try to keep it as cold as possible. And like even in the wintertime, if we have the heat on, I have the fan on. I have to have it on.
Oh, same.
So like I have one blanket that I sleep with, and I'm usually fine with it. But yeah, just dark and cold. Like essentially, I want to be in a cave indoors with all like the luxuries of like civilization, like indoor like running water. Just like essentially put me in a cave with like running water and electricity, and I'm good.
Greatest thing ever was, let me see, it was from when I was 19 to probably 23, 24. My parents lived in this house, and the basement was furnished, and that's where like my room was. So I had this like corner room of the basement. The only window that I had was like those really thick square windows, like that you get kind of at the bottom.
I'm already jealous. I know exactly where this is going.
So that window was really easy to cover up. And I worked third shift. So I was sleeping a lot during the day. I would get the best sleep of my life. Like, I would sleep for just hours, like maybe a good 10, 12 hours every so once in a while.
Man.
And people would go, I don't know how you sleep like that in there. And then I had someone else like sleep in there. I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, because it's pitch black and like you wake up and you're just like, if you feel tired, you can go right back to sleep.
It's like a sleep deprivation chamber almost.
Yeah.
Or not a sleep deprivation chamber. That's not what it is at all. You know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know what you meant. All right, question number 3. How do you feel about ketchup on hot dogs?
No. Mustard, relish, and onions.
Okay.
I think and I more than happy to be corrected here, but I think that's Chicago style. That's what one of my chefs told me, and he's from Chicago. So, I mean, that could be wrong, and also that could be matter of opinion, but that is actually how I prefer my hot dogs, is mustard, relish, and onions only.
I feel like Chicago style is anything but ketchup.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much like, if you could put whatever you want on a hot dog, but if you say ketchup, they look at you like you're crazy. I wonder what they feel about, which I don't know if you knew about this in Cleveland, which, on a side note, we need to get you guys back up here. There's a lot of great Cleveland stuff I need to introduce you to, but there was a place right by Our Lady of Mount Carmel called Happy Dog. It might be the signature dish, Happy Dog, but one of the ones they're well known for is just a simple hot dog with the topping of, are you ready for this? Fruit Loops.
Let's get it. Fruit Loops?
Fruit Loops.
I'd try that.
I never got a chance to try it, but that's what they're known for, and people like it.
That.
Yeah.
I'm a sweet and savory guy, so that makes perfect sense to me.
So
I'm pineapple on pizza, so that makes sense to me.
Well, that's fine. I could add that as a question, but I don't know. Some people are really, really crazy about it.
You'd probably start World War III with that one.
My favorite barbecue chicken pizza has pineapple on it, so I'm like, hey, like, it's great on a pizza. Like, do I want it on all my pizza? No, but I'll eat it. Like, it's not horrible.
Fuck, now I want pizza.
All right, let's get into the question number 4, which is the AJ Gray question. I forgot to prep you for, but I figured you've listened. You figured this was coming. Any unpopular opinions that you have that everybody else just don't seem to agree with you?
Oh, man, are you ready for this? I can drop a few on you.
All right.
And I feel like it's needed because I feel like everybody's like, I don't really have a hot take. All right, here's some for you. Pineapple does go on pizza. Cheeseless pizza is incredible.
Ooh.
Pepsi over Coke all day. Root beer sucks. Chocolate chip and mint, like chocolate and mint, don't go together.
Ooh.
Oh, man. I'm making enemies tonight.
Sheets is better than Wawa, I know.
Oh, yeah, Wawa. Wawa's the goat.
The funny thing is, that's two questions that I don't ask all the time, but one is Pepsi or Coke, and the other one is Sheets or Wawa, or a third option.
Oh, yeah. Pepsi over Coke, for sure. Wawa over Sheets, for sure. Every single time for me. I had another one. Oh, man.
Is it bone in over bone out?
3 is good.
Yeah, that funny thing is, because you mentioned it, I went out and bought the 5-movie box set on DVD.
Oh, man.
Well,
I'm so sorry.
No, here's the thing. I bought it because I thought I just owned 1 and 2, and then when I was pulling all my Christmas DVDs out, turns out the one box set I had before it on DVD was 1, 2, and 3, and I'm like, oh, I already have 3. And I
bet it's the same multi-pack that I had, because I found one at Target years ago, and it's like a cardboard case with like 2 slim DVD. Oh, actually, wait, never mind. I think this had 4 in it.
The 5 one I think had 5 slim DVDs. I forget what.
I know they put out. They put out one recently that's like a canister case almost.
Yeah, that was like a special edition one. I thought that was like a special edition for 1.
Yeah, if 4 and 5 didn't completely blow, I would buy that. But you lost me after 3. 3 is good.
I'm planning on rewatching that for the first time in like probably close to 20 years.
Look, if you don't like it after you watch it, after you rewatch it, watch Home Alone 4. Then you will appreciate Home Alone 3 as kind of a standalone, and you will fully understand how much of dog shit Home Alone 4 is. And I'm going to tell you, I've even attempted to watch the 5th one, and ooh, buddy, is it one of the worst things I've ever laid eyes on.
Wow.
Do I have any more hot takes? I think I covered the big ones.
Well, if we want to go over questions that I didn't ask you, do you prefer bone out over bone in? Because everybody says bone in, except for probably Wolfman, who hasn't been on the show.
I prefer traditional wings.
Okay.
But I will eat boneless chicken nugget tenders. I figured I'd cover all grounds on that last one. Because sometimes I just don't want to put in the work, and I just want to stab it with a fork and put it in my mouth. So, I mean, I do prefer traditional, but I will eat a boneless tender nugget.
I think that would be the only of the other ones questions. That's the only, like, could be a hot take. Because other ones, it's like a good 50-50 split. You're not really an unpopular opinion.
Yeah, I know I have more, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. But I definitely have some hot takes.
All right, question number 5, which this is interesting. This is the Wilkman question from a podcast. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Kick Out at 2. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
I think that if you want Die Hard to be, and this sounds like a total cop out.
I think I know where you're going, and it is.
If you want Die Hard to be a Christmas movie, I'm all for it. If you don't think Die Hard is a Christmas movie, I also understand that. I don't think I really care. It's also been quite a long time since I've watched Die Hard. So maybe I'll give it a rewatch over the next week, and I'll take to Twitter and say if I'm more Christmas movie or not. I'll give it a real solid rewatch soon, and I'll really weigh in on that one.
When I DM Wilkman, what am I supposed to say your answer was?
Oh, just for confrontation purposes, tell him it's a Christmas movie.
Okay. I will do that. I can't wait you might get his response before I do. He might go, what? Just
Traitor. Betrayal.
He's going to post his resignation to Kick Out at 2 and Southern Underground Pro. Like, screw this, I'm done.
Maybe I should have went, not Christmas movie, because he did keep me from going to jail in Delaware. So, nah, fuck it. We'll go Christmas movie. It's better this way.
I kind of go with, like, kind of what you're saying. Like, if you think it is, that's fine. I don't think it is, but I'm not, like, trying to force people to watch Christmas movies, and I hope no one's coming into, my house and telling me what I can and can't watch for Christmas. If you want to watch Spice World and say that's a Christmas movie, that's fine. You do that on your own, but, I'm going to watch, Jingle All the Way, Home Alone 1, 2, Santa Claus, Bad Santa. I'm not going to watch, not even Batman Returns, and I'm a huge Batman fan, but that's how I view it. If you want to watch Die Hard, Rocky IV, Gremlins, Batman Returns, and be like, these are my Christmas movies, hell yeah, man. Long as it makes you happy. I'm
going to throw one at you real quick. Die Hard has spawned off, all these, is this a Christmas movie? Is this a Christmas movie? The one I've not heard anyone mention?
Huh.
Mean Girls.
Oh.
There's the Christmas talent show where they do Jingle Bell Rock. I'm just saying, man. If you're gonna let somebody slide, maybe consider Mean Girls, which is one of the greatest movies of all time.
I've often said too, like, what about Step Brothers? The divorce happens on Christmas.
Man, I didn't even think about Step Brothers. There's so many movies with, like, Christmas scenes, and you're like, I mean, do you let it slide? Because if you let Die Hard slide, what is what's your rule here? What's your judgment? How do you pick and choose? I don't know, man.
For me, like, it has to embody the Christmas spirit. That's fair. The thing is, that's not something you can measure. People can watch Die Hard and be like, well, that's the Christmas spirit. Like, to me, it's not. And that's where I draw the line. It's something I mentioned with, I think it was Koo, is how a friend of mine brought this up years ago, and it's a really good point. Like, there's Christmas movies and there's holiday movies. Something could be a Christmas movie, but you're like, the Christmas spirit stuff, that's more of your holiday stuff. So
that's fair.
It's however you want to view it. But at the end of the day, just watch whatever you want to watch.
Yeah, like, okay, here's a really good question. Like, Halloween movies, are all horror movies Halloween movies? Like, let's think about it.
Oh.
Not to, like, open that can of worms, but, like, what really is a Halloween movie?
I've always considered most horror movies to be Halloween movies, but...
Same.
I guess someone could be like, well, that's not really Halloween. That's just more... It's
just a slasher movie.
Like, one series we both love, Saw. Like, that's a Halloween movie to a lot of people because, A, those came out every October. They are, a bunch of blood and gore, and that's something associated with Halloween. So, Halloween movie, but what other than that, what makes it a Halloween movie or Halloween series?
While we're on the topic of horror movies, one thing that I want from Wrestling Cheers is for you to have John Thorne on and for him just to rank his favorite slasher movies.
I don't know.
Because I think if anybody has close to the same taste in movies as me, it's him.
I might pull the trigger on that one day. The funny thing is, there was at one point I wanted to get Thorne on, but I wanted to get Thorne and Biggins on years ago. It was right as we were losing the old AIW venue called Turner's Hall, and right before they started going to Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And I was going to do a whole podcast where they got to talk about everything that was going on. They ended up getting fucked over by the people who own Turner's Hall, because at first they're like, "Oh, we're shutting it down," and then they ended up selling it because AIW was trying to buy it, and then they said, "No, we're not." First they were like, "No, we're not going to sell it," and then they're like, "Oh no, we're selling it." And AIW was
just not to you.
Yeah, basically. And AIW was like, "Well, we're not going to talk about this anymore," because that's basically what I was told. They're like, "Yeah, we got fucked over, and if I'm correct, if I'm wrong, I'm getting things mixed up." But basically, the whole premise was they got pissed, and they did not want to be associated with Turner's Hall anymore. Like, they didn't even want to talk about it. So I was like, all right, fine. So that kind of went out the window.
I can see that. I can see why they wouldn't want to really give them any publicity.
Yeah. Never had Biggins on my podcast, but shows up on your podcast.
Man, honestly, you want to know a really funny story about that? I really wanted Biggins on. I really wanted Biggins and Thorne on, but I gravitated towards Biggins, and he was just super cool and nice to us. I was actually piss drunk when I asked him to be on the podcast. I don't remember if that was night 1 or night 2 of. I think it was night 2 of Double Dare.
Yeah.
And Brittany and I had been drinking pretty much all damn day because we had Jolly Bill Fuckets on. And I bought a 12-pack, not thinking that they were in a tag team tournament and they had to wrestle multiple times that night. But I asked them what beer they drank, and they said Bud Light. So I went and got a 12-pack of Bud Light. And they're like, "We can't drink. We have to wrestle multiple times." And I just looked at Brittany and I go, "Fuck, we have to drink all this beer." And then I just kept drinking throughout the night, and I stumbled over to Biggins and just started talking to him about Southern wrestling. And then I was like, "It'd be really cool to have you on my podcast." He was like, "I don't typically do podcasts, but you seem pretty nice." And we just hit it off. And fucking miss Biggins, man.
I honestly think about him probably once a month, where there's something that comes up maybe. And recently it's been Southern wrestling or trying to collect not DVDs, but magazines and wrestlers. Not wrestlers. God, it's getting late. I'm starting to fungal up my words. Wrestling figures, stuff that I knew that he would buy off eBay, buy just a massive amounts of and sell. Something that I was so happy that I bought at the Rubber City Comic-Con or Rubber City Con is an Ultimate Warrior comic book.
Oh, wow.
Probably a couple shows before Biggins' last show, I told him, "Dude, I had that as a kid. I'm looking for it. Do you know if you have it?" He's like, "Yeah, it's in here somewhere, man. Just give me a heads up and I'll look for it, and we'll have it." Every time I'd get a hold of him before a show, it wouldn't be enough time, and he'd not get a chance to look. And then I happened to be flipping through a lot of the magazines at Rubber City Con, and I actually found 2 in the collection. And one was for $2, the other one was for $10. The $10 one, or should say the $2 one, had an address label on it. The $10 one didn't, but they were trying to get rid of some of the stuff, so I ended up buying it for $5. So,
oh wow,
yeah. So that's on my wall. To me, it's I loved the Warrior at that time. I'm a somewhat fan of the Warrior character, but I also look at it as this was the last thing I asked Biggins to find for me. And I know I have a handful of things in my collection of stuff that I bought off him, whether it be some magazines, some figures, or Best of Backyard Wrestling 1 through 4. I remember going up and all 4 of them were sitting there at the table, and I'm like, "Oh, dude, how much are these?" And I got told him, "Dude, I want them." So
I still have the one thing that I bought from him, which was an old like the promotion old wrestling DVD.
Okay, yeah. I love that they're on Powerbomb.
We wanted to go to one of their shows real bad when we were still doing the podcast, just because it's so fascinating. It's so different and fun.
Again, you guys need to come back up here.
No, you're right. Like, it's definitely something that I want to do. Like, I like the Cleveland area a lot. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, now we have a bunch of friends up there. So it would really just make sense for us to make a weekend. Maybe we could do that when Brittany comes back, is when I get off work one Friday, we can just drive up and spend a weekend up there.
I mean, J-Lit weekend's going to be coming up.
Fuck. I would, like, we'll talk about my schedule off here. I won't bore the people with it.
Okay. All right. Question number 6, which I tailor around our guest. Didn't really come up with one for you, but let's go off the top of my head. If you were to pick one VHS from your childhood, you don't necessarily have to have it in your collection right now. Which one is your favorite and why?
Oh, one VHS from my childhood. Oh, man. Damn, that's a good question. Okay, actually, I have an answer. From my childhood that I had, probably, and it's one that I don't have now that I can't find, the Mortal Kombat animated movie. I used to wear that tape out.
God, that would have to be expensive if you could find it now.
I haven't been able to find it like in the wild, and that's one thing I really like to do is just find my stuff in the wild. There's a few that I'll break down and buy when I see like on Facebook or something, because I'm in a bunch of VHS groups on Facebook. There's a couple that I'll like break down and buy for a reasonable price, but there's some that I just refuse to break down and buy online. One of them was Halloween 2. I was like, I'm going to find this. And sure as shit, I found it over the weekend. I found it in the wild, but I can't find that Mortal Kombat tape, and it is driving me insane because, like, who the fuck wants to watch that? And nobody but me. If you're out there, please let me know, because we can talk about this and what I don't remember from it, but I just remember wearing that tape out as a kid.
What was your reaction to some of the ones that I sent you?
Oh, dude. So that 976 Evil movie, I had no idea, but apparently that's worth like $15. Faces of Death is always something that has fascinated me because I've always heard it's real and I've heard that it's not real and I don't know what to believe. So I'm actually in the process of trying to get like a tube TV for a reasonable price and maybe a new VCR. I'm trying to figure out if my VCR is shit the bed or if it's the TV that we have. But that's probably the first thing that I'm going to watch when I get that all set up, is that Faces of Death, and kind of come up with my own opinion. You also sent me a Goosebumps. No, you sent me all the Goosebumps, which is cool because I'm actually going to a friend's house tomorrow as of recording this, and we're going to do a VHS trade. So I kept all the Goosebumps tapes that you sent me together, and then the 2 that I already had, I pulled out. I'm going to take over to their house and trade, see if they want them for anything. What else? You sent me like a Best of Raw. They're in the other room right now.
Yeah.
You sent me all the Goosebumps. There's The Simpsons, 976 Evil, Faces of Death, Best of Raw.
The Raw and the Simpsons ones were out of my collection.
Really?
Yeah.
That Simpsons one got me super excited because if I'm not mistaken, that's like in a hard plastic case, right?
Yeah, those 2 I bought when our movie gallery was getting out of the VHS business and just going strictly to DVD. And I remember buying those 2.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but like those old plastic cases, I love those things.
Yeah.
And the Raw one was cool because when I used to go to TNA as a kid, my mom met this girl that she became friends with and ended up working with, and she was a huge wrestling fan. And she had, like, there was a box set, I think, Best of Raw, and then there were, like, individual tapes, too, and she had both of them. And I remember sitting, when we would go over to her place, I remember sitting in the living room and watching that while her and my mom would do whatever. And I wore those tapes out like crazy whenever we were there. I would just finish one, put another one in, finish one, put another one in, obviously rewind in between, but yeah. When I saw that, I got real stoked. And actually, I've actually slowed down on getting wrestling tapes, but the other day I bought 2 FMW tapes for $5 shipped, and I'm really excited about that. I should be getting those in the next day or two.
All right, let's wrap this show up. It's been
taking up a lot of your time.
A little Christmas gift to the fans. So, any final thoughts or last minute plugs before we go for you?
Thank you so much for doing this entire month. Like I said earlier, it's just crazy that we've had enough of an impact where somebody who's roughly like 8 hours away wants to dedicate an entire month of, podcasting time in which they could, have anyone on. So just thank you to you, and thank you to anybody who takes the time to talk about us on their podcast, because whether it's 5 people listening or 5,000, it's always super cool to hear that somebody wants to take their time out to spotlight us in any way. So just thank you, and I'm looking forward to having you down in January for the sub show I Am King. That's going to be ridiculous. And if you guys want to follow us up, it's at SUP_GRAPS on Twitter and Instagram. And if for whatever reason you want to keep up with me, it's at Righteous Jesse on Twitter and Instagram.
Like we've had conversations of, like, this wasn't the original plan for the month, but in all honesty, I prefer this like this. The other person that I wanted on, fine, whatever, that fell through, but like looking back at just like the interview I had with Koo, like I was really happy with that, and that's like I didn't necessarily plan to have him on, and I think it was awesome. I think it was better than I could even imagine, and to have all 4 interviews, you were a last minute addition, and I wanted, like I said, I wanted it to be secret. I wanted it to be a surprise. I wanted to release on Christmas Day because of the history. And it just kind of goes to show you, sometimes, you have misunderstandings in your life. And sometimes there's these ill will or these just problems that happen. And if you can throw everything away and just start over, I would suggest to do it. Like, right, I have people that I know that I have issues with that I'll probably never throw away, but it has nothing to do with ill will. It just has to do with maybe moving past a point in my life. But, as bad as I feel for all of that happened between us, I'm grateful from where we've moved on to, and now it's even better. We don't text all the time, but we text enough. And I've even said, like, that whole thing was a learning experience from me, because I wasn't getting DMs back, and I felt disrespected. Now I don't get, like, the person that I wanted on, I didn't get a message back from them. I said, okay, that's how it's going to be, fine. I'm just going to move on. I'm going to have no ill will. There's going to be none of that. So it's like maybe a thank you for and I've now learned from that experience.
I'm just glad we were able to move past it, and we've gained friends out of this, and it's been really cool to see everything that it even in a weird way, like, kind of be a part of the ride, see everything you've done with Wrestling Cheers and how you've been so dedicated to it. And, the last year of Kick Out at 2 has been real, splotchy and hit and miss. So it's been cool to see you be so dedicated and stick with it. And, I listen quite often, just about every episode. I slacked for a while with all my podcasts, and I'm starting to catch back up.
Yeah.
But it's just been really cool to hear, every week you put out, consistent content, and it's just really cool that you you stick to what you like. And the one I've said it, to Jeremy and about Jeremy, about I got your 5 stars, but the thing that I like that you two do is if you say something, you stick to it, and, you're just honest. And that's something I think the world could use more of, is just honesty. If you don't like something, you say it, and then that's it.
Yeah.
It's not like a constant burial or, just dirt digging ceremony. It's just like, didn't like this, not for me, but this is cool, and I like this, and this is why, and this is, what I think you should check out. I value that in content that I consume. I want people that are going to be honest with me, whether it's their opinion or it's fact.
Yeah.
If you believe in it, I want to know about it because, like, we're friends. Your opinion holds weight to me. So if you don't like something for whatever reason, I want to know why. If you like something for whatever reason, I want to know why. So that's a huge reason why I listen to you and Jeremy, aside from the content, is just the honesty behind it. It's something that I appreciate a lot.
And if we can get Jeremy to watch a Tracy Smothers Colt Cabana match or a Marion Fontaine versus Rockstar Spud match, I'd pay for that commentary.
Oh man, I would love. I love Jeremy, but I think he would have a stroke doing that. But it would also be entertaining just to hear him, be brutally honest about what he thinks. Like, and that I think it's so funny when people get so caught up in other people's opinions because, like, just because they like it doesn't mean it's not good.
Yeah.
You still like it for the reason you like it. So just remember that just because they don't enjoy it doesn't mean you can't. Hell
yeah. And of course, going into the official wrapping it up, you can find myself at Heavyset330 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, just much like you can find this show at Wrestling Cheers on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, facebook.com/Wrestling Cheers, twitter.com/Wrestling Cheers, instagram.com/Wrestling Cheers. Email, if you so choose a desire, WrestlingCheers@gmail.com. We got a merch store over at whatamaneuver.net, and Kick Out at 2 has a merch store over at whatamaneuver.net. O'Shea Edwards has a merch store over at whatamaneuver.net. Marco Stunt. Am I missing people? Those are the main ones I can think of.
Yeah.
All #WhamFam. And rate, review, and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Podbean. WrestlingCheers.podbean.com. Check out our friends on the Trending Topics Network, such as All Beer Inside, Eurovision Showcase, and Old School at the Movies. Check out our other podcasting friends, such as Pod Van Dam, Center Stage, Super Fantastic Podcast, The Road Home from Wrestling, The Dave Dynasty Show, Kick Out at 2, When They Do a Show, The IndieCast, Sobros Network, and Big Gold Belt Podcast. Check out our other non-podcasting friends, such as Thrift Store Jobber, Rebel Life Media, The Savage Stash, Set Tab Photo, PowerSlam.tv. Use Wrestling Cheers, all one word, and get your first month free. And also, not necessarily a friend of the show, but we still have PowerBomb.tv. Use promo code SUPGRAPS, all one word, and get your first 20 days free. Sickening Pictures, Ringside Shots Photography, Russell Voigt, NEO Sports Insider, Midwest Territory, and the official graphic designer of Wrestling Cheers, Moy Boy Designs. That will do it for us here on Wrestling Cheers, where everybody knows your name. And keep the change, you filthy animal. Later.
Making your way in the world today takes everything you got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Would you like to get away? Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came.
What you can say, rules are all the same. You're for everybody else, you're
Are you tired of the same old pro wrestling? Then check out the amazing action on Powerslam.tv, the biggest indie pro wrestling channel in the world. Get over 3,000 hours of the best pro wrestling events from over 100 of the biggest names in the industry from over 15 countries around the globe. Get your free trial today at Powerslam.tv.